My parents feel 100% entitled to my money, and despite the fact that I'm working myself to the bone, my family is implying that I'm not doing enough to support them. And at this point, I feel like I'm losing my mind and I seriously just don't know what to do. Here's what's going on. I'm a 22-year-old female and a recent graduate, still looking for my first career job in tech. Earlier this year, I worked 2 jobs, but after getting laid off, I've been surviving on part-time work and small freelance gigs. But even so, my family acts like I'm their full-time bank. Now, I already cover my mom's phone bill, my car insurance, and other day-to-day expenses. But now she wants a $300 monthly allowance for bills. And if I ever push back, she says to me, well, I took care of you, so you should take care of me. She and my stepdad also expect me to build free websites for their businesses, plus help with our family jewelry business as well. At a recent jewelry show, I came straight from an overnight shift, fixed my car at 8 o'clock in the morning, worked the event all day, then went back to my night job. I paid for materials to make custom pieces, but my mom kept both that money and the money from her own sales. My older sister also couldn't make rent, so I ended up having to send her $500. My mom then told me to pick up extra shifts to keep helping her out. Also, my dad, who lives out of state, is constantly asking me for money, and this is money meant for himself or his friends, while also spending his own earnings on alcohol. Before COVID, he was financially stable, but now he's broke and waiting for me to get my real job so I can somehow fund his life. He recently said I should have paid for him to go to Africa for his sister's 50th birthday, and now he wants me to pay for a Christmas trip to London, even though I barely make anything right now, which I told him, by the way, but instead he just gets mad at me. He'll say things like, you save for things that you care about, and then he would just hang up on me. My mom also got mad at me a few weeks back when she asked how much I had in my savings, but told her at this point nothing, because I had to dip into my savings to help my older sister with her rent, and my dad wanted me to fly to visit him and my sisters and go to youth camp, so I saved to be able to do that, and then while I was there, I had to dip into my own savings to pay for more things, because my dad would just say, you're an adult now, no one's gonna pay for you. I also had to pay to get my car fixed, where I had to pay $900 for new tires, and my brakes were messed up. But despite all of this, she's still mad at me that I have nothing left over at this point. Now, I get that helping family is part of life, but I feel like I'm expected to fix everyone's problems while sacrificing my own stability. I can't save any money, I can't plan for my future, and I have no room to just exist. I'm always the responsible eldest daughter, holding literally everything together. My mom and stepdad just don't think I do enough, and I don't know if it's just a disconnect with me being an American child compared to them being immigrants from West Africa, or I'm just being lazy because my stepdad tells me all the time when I get home from working overnight that I should be in the kitchen cooking for the house, while also saying that I'm useless and dirty, all because my mom cooks the majority of the food in the house, or if I'm left to cook traditional African food, and somehow it's just not up to par. I mean, how my mom's cooking is an entirely different issue in and of itself, which really has nothing to do with me. I'm exhausted, and honestly, I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this. How am I expected to be everything for them, on top of juggling my career life and getting a postgraduate job, and then just being able to have like a social life too? Because my stepdad says all I do is stay in my room, which is not true at all. So I really need to know if I'm actually this selfish person that's being described, because at this point, I don't know what to do. Okay, holy crap. Your parents and your entire family are using you for money. They're treating you like crap, and they're trying to be like, oh, you're not working hard enough. You need to pick up extra shifts to take care of everybody else. Do this and do that. Like, dude, what is going on right now? You don't deserve this kind of treatment. You don't deserve this in the slightest. And the fact that your parents are even expecting this out of you is just insane. Instead of getting a job and like providing for themselves, they're looking at you and being like, okay, you need to fix this. You need to be the one to handle this. When it's like, oh, okay, well, maybe your older sister and your dad or your mom and stepdad can all get jobs themselves, and then they can provide for themselves like they should be doing. Like, why on earth does this fall on your shoulders? Like, you're not the one responsible for them. And I just love the fact that she's trying to be like, well, I took care of you, so now it's your turn to take care of me. But it's like, no, I'm not gonna bankroll your life. What are you talking about? This is so dumb and uncalled for, it's not even funny. So no, you are not being selfish. You're literally just trying to live your life and find a good job. And in my opinion, if I was in your shoes, I would be trying to move far away from these people, because I guarantee you that this is how they're gonna act probably for the rest of your life. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My neighbor literally stole my son's basketball and gave it to his kid as a present after my son accidentally threw it in our neighbor's backyard. Here's what happened. Okay, so me and my son were playing catch with a basketball in our backyard. We recently moved into this house because my wife was assigned to work in the area. Well, while we were playing, my son accidentally threw the ball too hard and it landed in our neighbor's backyard. And when we rang the doorbell, we found out that nobody was home. Later that afternoon, when they returned, we told them what happened and they said they would look for the ball and give it back if they found it. Well, a month went by and we still had no ball. When I asked again, they claimed they never found anything, and I just gave up and bought my son a new basketball. Well, a few days later, we were playing again when I saw a kid in the neighbor's backyard holding our old ball. I asked him about it and he told me his dad gave it to him as a birthday present last week. But that present was clearly my son's ball, the same one they told us they couldn't find. I felt bad for the kid because he thought it was a gift, so I just let him keep it. But the fact that my neighbor took something that belonged to my child and passed it off as a present to his own kid, in my opinion, is beyond entitled. Yeah, I definitely have to agree with the original poster here. I will say that other people in the comments section kind of pointed out that your first mistake was not waiting for them to go get it because you knew for a fact that the basketball was in the backyard. Like, I would have stayed at the front door as well and been like, hey, could you go grab it real quick or let me go back there and get it? Because you know it went over there, like you saw where the ball went. So for these neighbors who, by the way, I would never trust with anything ever again, to sit there and be like, well, I don't know where it went, who knows? Only to then gift their kid with a basketball that literally is yours. Like, that is super dishonest and very toxic. My idiotic assistant manager demands that I no longer do the dishes while on the clock helping out customers. So I decide to maliciously comply just to get this stupid rule overturned by only doing the dishes once my deli department closes at the end of the day, allowing me to get 9 extra hours of overtime in the process. Here's how I did it. So I work as both a teacher and at your Arizona hometown grocer, meaning that after I finish teaching 4th graders, I go work in the deli department. Now, there are tons of things to do. I can sweep and mop, take in the teas, the soups, tear down the hot case, which has about 20 items that get tossed around and have dishes needing to be done. And basically, I've developed a system where I work on the dishes as I go, and there's a bell to ring if someone needs customer service. Well, some customers didn't like this daunting task of having to ring a bell to get my attention. So a new policy has been adopted by the store management team. No doing dishes until the department is closed. And honestly, this is a big problem. The deli department doesn't have the hours to pay us past our scheduled time. And on top of this, anytime we work past our scheduled time in the departments counts as overtime, which is a double whammy for them. Now, I didn't believe this was the case, but either way, this was a logistical impossibility. I knew that I couldn't do the dishes after the department closes without, going past closing time, which is right when my malicious compliance starts to come into play. I pace back and forth through the front of the deli, watching for customers as I clean the slicers and countertops, which is the only things I could do for cleaning because they were within eyesight of customers. I have about 6 customers from 4 o'clock until 7 o'clock, walking past a sink full of dishes piled past the top and spilling over. I keep thinking how dumb this is that I can't do the dishes right now, but I resign myself to keep my plan of only working on customer service until 7 o'clock p.m. I keep tearing down stations and the dishes keep getting higher and piled more messily. But when 7 o'clock finally comes around, I start doing dishes and I finish about 2.5 hours later. Now, I do this 2 more times during the week, but I then get pulled into the office to have a meeting with both the deli manager and the assistant manager. The assistant manager says, "It appears that there's a bit of a problem here. You should not be taking 3 hours to do the dishes." The deli manager then chimes in and says, "Yeah, why don't you do the dishes between customers?" Well, I slowly look over to a very sheepish looking assistant manager who looks at me like they want me to shut up. I then said, well, management said I can't do dishes until the department closes. This then started an argument back and forth between my deli manager and the assistant manager that literally turned so angry that I got so uncomfortable. The deli manager then said that this overtime hours isn't coming out of my department and then demanded that the manager fix it. But the assistant manager was yelling back saying that they're overstepping here. But then they looked at me and said that I need to make sure I do the dishes in between customers. So needless to say, I got to close 9 hours of overtime that week, which was really nice because now I'm considering getting some new shoes. Okay, I love stories like this so much because this really shines a light on the fact that this manager didn't know anything about the deli department. They literally just don't know what they're talking about and they don't know the fact that, hey, we don't get that many customers, so there's no reason reason the original poster can't do the dishes while waiting for customers to show up. Like, this manager literally wasted everybody's time and gave the original poster like 9 extra hours for pretty much no reason. So honestly, sometimes all it takes is some like malicious compliance to get things in order, because that new rule was completely stupid. My entitled ex not only cheated on me, but also is asking me to give him updates about our dog. So I decided to get some petty revenge by only sending him pictures of our dog when she's taking a poop, reminding him of exactly how I feel about him after he literally cheated on me. Here's how I did it. Okay, so my ex-fiance of 7 years recently dumped me for a younger woman that he met on TikTok. To make a long story short, I had suspicions about his infidelity since January of this year, but every time I raised concerns, I would get hit with a good old, "Oh, don't worry, babe, she's just my best friend." Well, it turns out I was right, and the very same day we called our relationship off. He's posting on social media about how much he loves his new girl. Last week, he met her in real life for the first time and moved her like 6 states away into his dad's house. And keep in mind, we've only been broken up for like exactly a month today. Anyways, we had a dog together by the name of Rosie. The house we were living in together is mine, so I decided to keep her here with me since I had more stability and she's best friends with my roommate's dogs. And he agreed that she would probably be better off with me and only asked that I send him pictures of her and keep him updated on how she's doing. So I said to him, "Sure, I'll email you some photos every few months." So every single day since then, whenever I let Rosie out into the yard, I'll take pictures of her pooping to send to my ex. I've gotten all different angles, a couple of videos, the whole 9 yards. So in a couple of months, he'll have an inbox full of our dog taking a crap just to remind him exactly how I think about him. Yeah, I love this story a lot. This is so funny to me. This guy literally left the original poster just so they could hook up with someone they met on TikTok. Like, dude, you gotta be desperate if that's the route you're going. Not to mention the fact that he's never even met her. Like, what's going on right now? That is so dumb. Like, not only was this guy cheating on you, but also he seriously had the audacity to sit there and be like, "Hey, can you send me pictures of the dog? I want to be updated every few months on how the dog's doing." So yeah, sending him pictures of Rosie taking a crap, in my opinion, is exactly the type of karma this guy absolutely deserves. Am I the jerk for refusing to pay for a wedding that I'm literally not attending? Because right now, my ex-boyfriend is really guilt-tripping me, as he says that I should help offset the cost of his friend's wedding that we were supposed to go to together. But despite that, I still refuse to pay, and I'm just wondering if I'm in the wrong. Here's how it all went down. I'm a 30-year-old female, and I started a relationship with Joe in the middle of May of this year. Shortly after we started going out, he asked me to be a +1 to his friend's wedding, who we will call Meg. And while I had never met Meg, I did agree to go. We reserved our spot, and Joe booked plane tickets and a hotel room. Well, a couple of days ago, I ended the relationship with Joe. It's important to note that while money was not the main reason for the breakup, it was one of the things that we argued about most. I am very frugal, perhaps to a fault, and Joe likes to spend money on creature comforts and trips, and often expects me to do the same. Joe lives at home rent-free, while I have my own apartment. I live pretty much paycheck to paycheck, with a small stash set aside in savings. Now, there is still about 5 weeks left until the wedding. I ended the relationship when I did, partly because I didn't want to be in the pictures from the wedding and cause people to feel bad when they look back at those pictures. I am returning everything Joe left in my apartment, except for a few things that he was okay with me keeping. I also offered to pay for my plane ticket and half of the hotel stay as a good faith gesture. It comes to over $400, which is just about everything I have in my savings. Well, today, Joe contacted me and asked if I could pay another $125 on top of all of that to offset Meg's cost for my plate and everything at the reception. He says it's so close to the wedding, and since deposits have gone to vendors, I should at least pay for my portion. But I think that more than a month's notice is ample time for Meg to either fill the seat or for Joe to find another +1, who would also, by the way, be benefiting from my paying half of the hotel stay. I also think that since I wouldn't pay that money if I was attending, then I shouldn't have to pay now that I'm not. It's my understanding that people not going to weddings after they reserve a spot is just one of those costs that's inevitable, and I'm at least doing Meg the courtesy of giving a month's notice. So am I the jerk for not wanting to pay this? Because right now I'm not sure if I'm in the wrong. Oh man, no, you're definitely not the jerk here. You gave them like, what, 5 weeks I think is what you said, just to like figure things out? It is absolutely ridiculous for them to come at you and be like, "Oh, you need to pay for your plate. Sorry, but that's just the way things are." Like, no, I don't think so. That's not happening here. So no, you are definitely not the jerk here. Today, I want to confess that I've had over 100 cars towed out of my old parking spot, and even though I didn't own a car to fill in that space, I honestly don't regret doing it for a single second. Here's how I did it. Okay, so I lived in DC for the last 4 years, and when I first moved, I had a great apartment on the Red Line, which is one of the most popular commuter lines. Since most of these commuters were middle to upper class, they usually just drove to the station and parked. My parking lot was not secured with any sort of gate or control, so regularly people in a rush would try to use our lot for either the station or for the nearby shopping complex. My first ever encounter with my parking space was with a lady who so viciously berated me when I told her that spot didn't belong to her that I made the decision to tow away any car I saw, no matter what the circumstance might be. Well, over one calendar year of living there, I had somewhere between 100 and 130 cars towed off of my spot. The towing company recognized me and had a regular station nearby where the tow truck would wait for the people like this to park in lots they weren't allowed to. Now, for the record, they weren't personally helping me or planning around my calls. They just patrolled our area often, and I was by far their biggest caller. I mean, I've had cars towed in as little as 2 minutes after the people left their cars. I've also had 3 cars towed in 2 hours. Entire families have broken down in my lot because their minivan suddenly disappeared after only 5 minutes at the store. And you know what? I absolutely love it. Don't park in my spot. There are towing signs every 3 spaces with big, bold, underlined letters. It clearly states this is resident parking only. You will be towed. It's not like there's one sign in the far corner of the lot. It's as plain as day for anyone parking to see that you aren't allowed to be there. There are too many rule breakers in society these days, so I guess in the end you'll have to pay for it with your own car. Okay, honestly, I've got to be honest with you. This guy is probably my hero because I am absolutely on his side. I know I'm probably taking the side of like the Joker from Gotham, but like hear me out for a second. If the common theme with these types of people is that they're rude and entitled, and they're just taking the first spot they can see regardless of who that spot belongs to, then guess what? They should be towed. They should be punished for taking someone's spot and literally denying them the right to park their car, especially if you're paying for that. And I can only imagine how expensive it is to live in DC as it is, let alone have a personal spot that's yours to use for your own stuff. So for some idiot to drive in there dodging all the signs that say, hey, don't park here, you're gonna get towed. If you're not a resident, it's gonna be bad. Then in my opinion, they absolutely deserve to get towed, and I honestly just wouldn't feel bad about it either. So good for you for doing this, because this honestly sounds incredibly hilarious. Would I be the jerk for not proofreading an important document that my best friend's son needs filled out for his law enforcement academy application? Because right now, after going through this several times, I'm honestly exhausted and I'm feeling very burnt out dealing with this unorganized individual. And at this point, I don't know if I'm making a mistake or if I'm in the right. Here's what's going on. My best friend's son is 20 years old and wants to join a law enforcement academy. Our families have been extremely close since long before his birth, and I honestly love this boy with all my heart. But I and other members of his family don't necessarily think that this is the right type of work for him. But regardless, we have been supporting him. Now, his family doesn't have a scanner, and he has a huge 30+ page document to fill out and email in. He sent it to me to print out for him, then he completed it and gave it to my husband last night to scan. The pages were out of order, several had missing information like previous addresses, his phone number was illegible, information entered into wrong places was crudely scratched out, and he even forgot to put his name on it. And I guess he got confused because it had a place for a maiden name. He has ADHD and always had trouble in school with completing assignments, and his handwriting is very childlike and practically illegible. And these are just 2 of the reasons why we feel this isn't a good fit for him. We also found out last night that he had the email for a week before he sent it to me for printing. He said he didn't get a notification that he received it. Well, we got it back in order and I started going through it, finding the errors. I then called his mom and I talked to her about it. We reprinted the pages that needed to be redone. He picked them up after work and she stood over him while he fixed it all. My husband then scanned it today, emailed it to him, and then copied it onto me. I then verified with his mom that she had looked over everything and that I didn't need to proofread it again, and she said yes. But with that in mind, here's the problem. Just glancing through, I still found errors, including the date on the signature page. Now, I've opted not to say anything and let the chips fall where they may, and my husband honestly agrees as well. Our thinking is the following. If he needs 3 other people to help apply for a position and still can't get the paperwork right, then guess what? That's on him. Now, the official email hasn't gone out yet, so would I be the jerk if I just didn't say anything? Because right now, that's kind of what I'm leaning to. Okay, this sounds obnoxious. Holy crap. I don't care whose best friend's son this is. If he can't get it right on his own, then guess what? That's his problem. Like, this is a classic case of like, oh, I want to do this thing, but I want you to do it for me. And no, him having ADHD is not an excuse. There's plenty of people who have ADHD but can still get stuff like this done no problem. So in my opinion, I think you would be completely justified in just sending this off and saying nothing about it. Because if that paperwork is wrong in any way, then guess what? That's on him and nobody else. An entitled Karen literally stands in front of the salads that I was trying to get, as she chose to get incredibly mad at me when I reached for one in a way that was incredibly obnoxious and very performative. Here's what happened. Okay, so this happened years ago, but something recently made me think of it. I went with a friend to Publix, which is a grocery store, on our lunch break so we could grab some lunch. Go figure, right? Now, for those of you who don't know, Publix has a food service counter where you can get handmade subs, fried chicken, and a few other hot food items. Now, we get there and the line is too long, and neither of us want to wait in in it. So we decide to just grab some prepackaged food. I go to the prepackaged salads and there's a woman waiting in line for the food counter, standing sort of in front of the salad cooler. I take a second to look from a distance at my options and then politely say, "Excuse me," and I reach for one. Well, this lady just simply doesn't move. So I think to myself, okay, whatever. I'll just go ahead and lean around her, I guess. So I pick up the salad and I realize it's not what I want. Once again, I awkwardly lean around her and I say, "Excuse me," again, return the salad, and then I pick another one. Well, at this point, she huffs and turns to her friend and says loudly, "Am I invisible? Do they not see me standing here?" And then she gives me the death stare. Now, I was so taken aback, I just turned and walked away, which I do regret doing, but I'm on the spectrum, and sometimes I miss social cues. So I thought I had done something to earn such a reaction. Luckily, my friend and coworker was with me and confirmed that it wasn't me that was the problem. Looking back, she was just being difficult for no reason. There was plenty of space for her to have stepped forward and kept her place in line. Like, I just wanted a salad and you were standing in front of them. Like, honestly, I don't know what you want me to do with that because seriously, you were literally in the way. Yeah, I can't stand people like that because literally it seems like this lady was doing that on purpose. Like, I'm sure she knew you were right around her trying to get a salad off like the rack next to her, and she just decided, "Oh, I'm just gonna stand here in the way. I don't have to move for you." And it's like, no, you're right. You really don't have to move for me, but if you're not gonna move, then I'm gonna go around you. And I'm gonna make you look really silly in the process. Like, I asked you twice to move out of the way. Please excuse me. I'm trying to get past you. So at that point, I'm just gonna go around you as if you don't exist. So to that lady, no, you're not invisible, but you are being an idiot. And if you wanna act like a statue, then I will move around you like a statue. I got no time for that. So yeah, I wouldn't let this bother you because people like this honestly have bigger problems in life, and you just so happen to be the person that they were gonna take it out on.
Shady boss lied to me about my position and benefits for years, ended up costing him $21,000 in reimbursements. A few years ago, I worked at a big retail company for many years. Eventually, I went through enough grad school education to get my license to work at a higher level. This meant more pay, more job satisfaction, more responsibility, fancy title, but unfortunately, the job market was rough. I stayed on with the company to work in a floater position where I would cover a large area and work all the stores on a rotating but irregular basis. Eventually, I wanted to get a staff position where I have a single store assigned. The area was huge, the furthest store being over 100 miles from my home, and that is exactly where I was assigned to train for my new role. It was a rough store. People in my position were robbed and assaulted at gunpoint. The neighborhood was very unfriendly, volume at the store was among the highest in the state, and staff turnover was, as you might expect, extreme. Well, after training, I wasn't being scheduled to float to other stores, once a month at most. I asked to be scheduled a little bit more diversely, since most of the stores in my area were much closer to my home and didn't require 4 hours of driving a day. Boss man told me that I was the only floater experienced enough to handle that store. I didn't buy it, but what can you do, right? Well, a colleague of mine told me about the mileage reimbursement policy. Floaters working at a store more than 50 miles from their home can file for reimbursement of mileage over 50 miles each way. This also included meals. So I filled out a few of these and sent them to my boss to sign. He didn't refuse, but he actually never signed or filed them. I suspected as soon as I left his office at the district center, he tossed them out. Boss man tells me later they must have been lost in the system. Eventually, the same colleague showed me how to fax those same forms to accounts payable, bypassing the district boss. So I started doing just that. One day, boss man calls me in a panic. He wants me to stop filing those forms. I asked to be floated closer to home, but he won't budge. He says he needs me at that miserable store. He promises me that he will make me a staff role at the store if I promise to stop faxing those forms. Staff roles are a promotion and usually come with better pay and a few other little conveniences, so I agree. Boss man says there won't be a pay bump right away, but it'll come down the road. That never happened. 2 years later, the situation at the store has become too toxic for even me. I asked to step down from the staff position to be a floater again and be allowed to float to other stores. Boss man says that I'm already a floater, never was in a staff position, but he can't let me go work at other stores because it's better for me and the customers if I stay there for familiarity. Floaters don't get scheduled to stores exclusively, so I'm being singled out because they're so desperate to cover that dump of a store. At this point, I'm livid, so I start looking. It took me months, but I eventually found an opportunity to make my dream career transition. I put in my formal notice, and that's when the fun started. Well, I kept a meticulous track of all my shifts, and there is no statute of limitation baked into the policy. So I started filing out those reimbursement forms to retroactively cover every shift from the past 2 odd years. I skipped the meals part because I didn't want to go through all of the effort of finding receipts. I had a friendly store manager start signing off on them and I sent them directly to accounts payable. I didn't fax them all at once, but for each shift in my final 2 weeks, I faxed a few dozen in. We still had a fax machine in this line of work, believe it or not. I figured, what do I have to lose? Worst case scenario, accounts payable declines the forms. On my last few shifts, I started getting the checks from accounts payable. Not added to my paycheck, but sent to me directly. Mileage reimbursements are non-taxable income, so this was all tax-free money coming to me. It must have taken a while for the charges to show up on the balance sheet, because a few weeks after my final paycheck, I got a call from my now former boss. He wasn't happy. He got some big loss prevention manager involved, and together they started saying that I was breaking some rule by requesting the payments. They specifically claimed that I was ineligible because I agreed and I wouldn't be eligible in a staff position. They then threatened legal action against me if I didn't remit the full amounts back that same week. But I had the email chain from when Bossman said I was never staff, and I was always a floater. I politely referred to that email chain before letting them know firmly that because I was lied to, our prior agreement didn't apply and I was fully eligible all along. Corporate policy, as confirmed by HR, agreed with me, so I let them know I wasn't returning a single penny. In the end, the reimbursements amounted to well over 21,000 USD, and I transitioned into my dream job. I would say that I would trade that money back for the time that I lost commuting to that miserable store, 4 hours every shift, but all that pressure motivated me to make the best career move of my life. The great satisfaction of not only professionally surpassing my old boss, but getting to tell him that his lies cost him way more on the way out is almost priceless. I also shared my story and method with many colleagues who were being told wrongly by the boss that they didn't qualify for this policy. This story does have an edit. Edit 1. Thank you for all the support and comments. As many of you correctly guessed, I worked as a community pharmacist. I do want to clarify that most of my workers, technicians, pharmacists, front-end staff, and customers and patients were amazing people. Between them and my subscription to Audible with a long list of books I always wanted to read, it made the situation tolerable with all that time. The job retail market for pharmacy was and is also very rough, and I don't think I can overstate that enough. It has empowered big chains to abuse their staff this way and other ways. This also endangers patient care, not to mention staff's mental health. I spent more than 10 months searching before I found an opportunity that involved me leaving the profession entirely. The district manager, who was the boss man, and the general store manager, who was fully complicit in this lie, are both still working for the company last I saw. Moral of the story, please understand your company's policies and ignore any verbal agreements or HR unsupported decrees otherwise. And be kind to your pharmacy staff. The job and the company are not always kind to them. That story's pretty relatable, and since the OP didn't specify which big company they work for, I feel like it's pretty easy to guess, and I'm sure most people listening have shopped here before. If my guess is correct, I also worked for this big company for 5 years. Anyways, I'm glad this person got 21K reimbursed and got to stick it to their boss on the way out. Like I've said many times before, people, always make a paper trail when your boss promises you something. It'll save you in the long run. You want me to shut up and follow directions? Okie dokie. New to Reddit and just discovered this sub. Reading your fabulous malicious compliance jogged my memory. This happened around the 2000s when I was working for my uncle's fencing company. So customer A purchased a newly constructed home. Cookie cutter, everything building grade. The land plots were divided by fluorescent orange marking spray paint. Hardly official. My uncle submitted a bid per customer A's request and we got the project. We had the lowest bid, around $1,200 lower than their competition. The caveat, we collect full payment up front. Not a deal breaker for most customers as we accept credit card payments. This way both parties are protected from fraud. During that time, my uncle had just left his previous job as a land surveyor. His specialty? Property line surveying. The estimated property line, marked by the above-mentioned orange spray paint, was nearly 2 feet off one side of customer A's property. My uncle makes the necessary adjustments and we start digging the post holes. Customer A makes a surprise job site visit. He sees our post holes and turns beet red. He rushes towards us and starts dropping F-bombs left and right. What the heck are you idiots doing? You're giving away part of my property, my jerk neighbor. Can't you jerks bleep and see the bright orange markings on the bleeping dirt? I want you geniuses to fill up these holes ASAP and dig right where the orange lines are. I want my fence directly on top of the orange lines. I just about lost it when I was about to get in customer A's face. My uncle stopped me and he tries to explain. Those orange lines are off. Customer A interrupts. I'm the one paying here, not you. You follow my bleeping directions. Please, if you would just let me explain. No, I paid you in full. You're not paid to explain. You're paid to build my fence exactly the way I want it, where I want it. This bleeping conversation is over. He drives off and my uncle looks at me with a malicious smile. Let's grab an early lunch and then we'll give him what he wants. I shrug. Over lunch he calls my aunt, his secretary, to have her draft a new JOC work order, aka a contract. In it, he specifically and officially noted that the fence will be erected 22 inches east of the official property line, and that customer will shoulder full responsibility and liability should a conflict arise with their future neighbor. The home next door was still unsold at this point. Aunt emails the contract to customer A. My uncle and I have our 2-martini lunch hour. Aunt calls and says customer A has signed and emailed the contract back to her. And now that we have a paper trail, we go back to the job site and continue working. The same afternoon, customer A pays another visit and says, "Just checking to see if you decided to follow my instructions. You two idiots didn't wait until I signed that new contract before resuming work, did you?" "We sure did." As he turned around to leave, I hear him mouth something like, "Bleepin' idiots." Upon completion, 3 days later, he signs off that the work was satisfactory. He was still in jerk mode, refusing to acknowledge either my uncle or I when we thanked him for his business. 4 months later, he contacted my uncle again, requesting for a bid on a new project. Yep, you guessed it, to move the existing fence on top of the official property line. We gave him an unreasonably high bid and still secured the project. This time around, he was a teddy bear throughout the entire thing. Always make a paper trail. I don't know how many times I have said this by now, but this is the best thing you will ever learn if you start a business or work for a big company. Actually, if you work for any company. This dude was a total jerk though. I don't understand why people feel like they need to be this way towards the working class. I hope he's learned his lesson for being a jerk. I don't do anything right? Fine, I'll do it your way. I used to work for a private company which was owned by a wealthy woman who could afford to have her dim-witted, stubborn, and mean daughter run one of the departments. It didn't go well, but it was a small department and the mother was more interested in keeping her daughter happy than making a profit. Thankfully, the daughter, M, usually only worked a few hours each morning to help me out, and then she would leave. I'm all for inclusion and encouraging people to learn new things, but M was not fit for management and definitely didn't have the faculties for accounting. She would help me, and I would wait for her to leave so I could fix it, writing legible notes, sending notices, giving customers change and receipts, posting past due notices, etc. This went on for 3 years until I found a better job and gave my 2 weeks notice. M was livid. She felt like it was a betrayal. M started staying all day to start doing bookkeeping. She started talking to coworkers and customers alike, telling them I don't know how to do my job. I do everything wrong, and it's all my fault we weren't a better department. She would do this in front of my face too, pulling someone aside to talk in stage whispers. I can't do anything right? If you say so. I stopped doing things my way and I started doing them explicitly how she asked. I won't take full usage from payment, but instead give change like they're buying 1 unit. I won't transcribe her atrocious handwriting. I won't give past due notices. I won't maintain the customer balance spreadsheet. By the end of my last 2 weeks, they had switched from using Excel to using a spiral notebook to log customer payments, gave away the laptop with the old notes and customer contact sheet, and forgave any outstanding balances because M insisted my notes were wrong, meaning they lost a couple $1,000s, and clients have no way to contact them unless they came in person since our department didn't have a designated phone number. But remember, I didn't do anything right. Man, I don't know if there's anything worse than a manager that got their job because mommy and daddy gave it to them. It's kind of hard to respect someone in a position of power when they didn't work to get there. I don't know, that's my opinion, but what do you think? Was this guy a jerk for what he did? You don't care what I wear to the party? Okay, bet. This happened a long time ago in a friend group of mine. Julia, 27 female at the time of the incident, was having a garden party. Julia was basically a good person, but stressed out over tiny details easily. And when she was throwing a party, she could sometimes get a little, well, whatever the equivalent to a bridezilla is that's actually not at a wedding. In this case, she was driving all of us girls nuts with her vision for the party, which included each of us in a different color coordinated pastel dress so that we could collectively look like a rainbow. Enter Mickey, 24 male. Mickey was and still is Julia's best friend. He definitely had a streak of mischief to him. And he was also the only person who could usually make Julia see how ridiculous she was being when she got like this. We asked him if he could talk to her about it, but he didn't get anywhere this time. Julia said tiredly, "Please just let me have this. I've been working on it for months." Eventually, we ended up agreeing to wear what she wanted us to wear, so long as she paid for the dresses, which to her credit, she did. Meanwhile, though, Mickey asked her what he was supposed to wear. Now, Julia's vision didn't really include specific plans for what the guys were going to wear. She just wanted them in suits and stuff. So when Mickey asked her that in the middle of a hurried moment, she blurted, "I don't care, just wear whatever you normally wear to an outdoor party." Cue malicious compliance. Or at least mischievous compliance, since I don't think there was much malice involved. See, Mickey worked at a Ren fair. When he went to outdoor parties, which he did several times every summer, he attended as part of the staff, and he had a very specific costume he was supposed to wear. And so, on the day of the party, he shows up early, along with most of the rest of us, to help Julia set up. And he was wearing a full Ren Fair Jester's costume, complete with cap and bells. To Julia's credit, her first reaction was to laugh her head off. Her second was to swat him. Mickey did set up the Jester's outfit and then fully admitted just before the party that he had a different outfit in his bag if she would like him to change. He hadn't intended to really mess up her party, only to break her brain a little bit before it started. Julia eventually did tell him that it would be nice if he would go change, but she did have to think about it. She admitted she started to think it might be worth it just to see how everybody else reacted to this perfectly set up garden party, with the pseudo-medieval jester wandering around. I kinda wanna hang out with Mickey. This is the kind of malicious compliance that I love. It doesn't hurt anyone, and people probably got a good laugh out of it. So good on Mickey for bringing the laughs to the party. Also, I like that the OP didn't automatically call Julia a Karen. I know we do a lot of Karen stories around here, but sometimes people do just get frustrated when they're trying to plan stuff out. So it's always good when friends can call out your flaws, but also know that you're still a good person underneath your crazy. That ain't no way to speak to a lady. So I've been a shift supervisor for a retail drugstore chain for over a decade. An unfortunate part of my job is I get cursed at a lot. Sometimes I joke that I'm immune to it. Some many years ago, I was working at a store in a not so good area. There were constantly homeless panhandlers outside. We called this group of them the Wasted Bunch for obvious reasons. They were becoming such a nuisance that we decided to exercise our right to refuse service and refuse to sell them booze. They were able to buy anything else in the store but booze. They didn't really take that well, but it kept them away. This particular day, I got a complaint about panhandlers outside, so I go out and tell them to leave. It's the Wasted Bunch, and they have a new friend. We'll call him John for this story. Before I tell them to leave, I see one of the Wasted Bunch handing John some money and overhearing Bubba Light. The Wasted Bunch leave, and John makes his way to the booze section to pick up an 18-pack of Bubba Light. Inferring that the Wasted Bunch have found a new way around our refusal, I decide to handle John myself. I tell John that I know he's buying booze for the Wasted Bunch, so I'm exercising my right to refuse service. John gets irate. After arguing with me for a few minutes, he spouts some colorful language at me and makes his way out. On his way out, he yells a few swear words at a passing customer. The next thing I hear is a female voice screaming, "Honey, honey, no!" I see a woman about 50 grabbing her husband's shirt. Husband is also about 50. I'm going to refer to the husband as Dave. Dave has his fists clenched and he is marching his way towards John, screaming, "That ain't no way to speak to a lady." Dave's wife stops him before he gets to the door. The couple get in line and I start ringing up customers with another cashier. When Dave and his wife get to my register, I thank Dave for being a gentleman, but I'm okay. Dave's wife explains that her husband does not tolerate people using foul language to women or mistreating women. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking Dave is nuts. John is about the same age as Dave, but about a foot taller. John also looks a little heftier than Dave. Fast forward 2 weeks later and the overnight shift supervisor is dealing with a homeless man. It's 5 a.m. and the homeless man will not stop cursing. Every other word out of his mouth is a curse word. He's saying it to the supervisor and the cashier, both female, and to a few customers. The supervisor is trying to figure out what to do when Dave comes in. Dave confronts the homeless man in a firm tone, "That ain't no way to speak to a lady. Apologize now." Homeless man then starts cursing at Dave. Dave hands homeless man $20 to please get lost and take his dirty mouth back to where he came from. Dave specifically mentioned several nearby counties and cities that have had bad homeless problems. Next thing, Supervisor notices homeless man running off and Dave has a large cut on his arm. Supervisor offers to call 911, but Dave refuses. He claims that he was trying to give the homeless man a hug and something on the homeless man's jacket cut him. Supervisor grabs some first aid supplies for Dave. Dave buys what he came in for along with the first aid supplies, even though we said we would comp them. I come in 2 hours later to start my morning shift and my supervisor is telling me of the events of the night. We pull up the camera footage and watch the events unfold. I had told the overnight supervisor about Dave, but she had never met him prior to this. I confirmed that that was him. Apparently, after Dave tried to give the homeless man $20, homeless man pulled out what looked like a knife. When Dave tried to take the knife from him, he got cut. We reported the incident to the higher up, stating that Dave did not want to press charges and did not want medical attention. Just to give a perspective, most of us have heard that cursing is wrong and that you don't use it in front of women. However, Dave has been the only one we've ever seen enforce it. We later learned that Dave is the owner and instructor at a mixed martial arts studio and gives free self-defense lessons. So Dave has a few black belts. To Dave and all the men like him, thank you for being gentlemen, but be careful. Let's raise a glass to Dave. I'm not a fan of violence against others, but I also understand that sometimes people just need to get knocked out for acting up. So shout out to Dave for making the world a better place. But remember kids, Dave has a few black belts, so don't try being a hero if you've only ever fought people in Fortnite. Am I the jerk? I fell in love with someone else. About 30 minutes ago, it hit me. I cried with the realization and guilt. I'm in a committed relationship with a wonderful man. We've been together for over 10 years and we have created a blended family together. He's truly my best friend and I know how lucky I am to have him in my life. A few months ago, a new guy joined our workplace and I had an instant crush on him. We get on very well and share a lot of interest. We talk outside of work occasionally, nothing crazy, and I would never even entertain the idea of being anything more than friends. Anyways, I found myself looking at pictures of him. I knew I shouldn't be doing this, but I did it anyways. It was right then that it hit me, that my feelings had moved beyond a crush, not maybe love, but certainly felt like it was for a moment. Now I'm feeling massively guilty. I love my partner and I just thought of having any kind of feeling for anyone else makes me upset. I would never do anything to hurt him, ever, but I can't stand feeling like this. Do I tell him, or is it not worth causing trouble over, since I know nothing would ever happen? Side note, the other guy is definitely just a friend and I'm pretty sure he has nothing but friendly feelings towards me. Oh man, the classic workplace love interest. I won't lie, this has definitely happened to me multiple times while I was dating someone for 5 years. Oddly enough, these women were always from California, a place I had never visited before, but they just gave out this different vibe, which I enjoyed. Also, now that I visited Cali, I love it there. But I think this is just human nature to develop feelings for other people, especially if you see them on a daily basis and get along. The important thing is that you never act on those feelings. I hate this idea that people can't be attracted to their friends. It's like the moment you admit that someone is attractive, it means that you have no self-control and things are going to get spicy. It's called respect, and believe it or not, people still have that sometimes. Don't stop painting the mural? Sure thing, boss. For the last 3 years, I have worked as a muralist for a mural company. It's hard work, but also rewarding. Also, I love the beautification of public spaces. I had a good boss. He was a skilled painter who worked alongside us on the projects in addition to providing us with plenty of financial incentives and encouragements. Unfortunately, he retired last year and gave full control of the business to his partner. It immediately became a dumpster fire. The business partner had controlled the administration side of the company. He was not a painter and didn't understand the work it took. He would overbook clients and overpromise on completion dates. He never offered us incentives and would only berate us for not getting jobs done quick enough. We tried to tell him that the old boss has always encouraged us to make our time and deliver the best murals, as the company's reputation rested on the quality of work. We also tried to explain as artists we wanted to be proud of the work that we put out there. He brushed it off with, "You're paid to finish jobs, just get it done." This was incredibly demoralizing, and after 2 months of churning out rushed work, we were burnt out. One of our 4 muralists quit. The final straw came 3 months later. Our company won a huge bid to paint the side of a 5-story tall building using my design. I told the boss that it would take us 5 weeks to complete. However, a week before the project was due to start, he told us that we only had 3 weeks. We protested, citing that we're down 1 muralist, there's safety issues, weather changes, and the complexity of the design. He, of course, told us that the contract has been signed and brushed off our concerns. He did, however, offer us financial incentives for overtime work this time, and knowing that there was nothing we could do, we accepted it. I simplified the design and we planned to stay late. The weather got bad as predicted. There were a few days of rain where we barely got got any work done. We fell behind and told the boss that we had to get an extension. Our client was nice enough to grant another week, but our boss was mad. He would show up to the job site regularly just to rush us. On the third week, we were working, then a slight drizzle started. We were waiting in our cars hoping that it would pass when the boss showed up. The moment he saw us, he started accusing us of being lazy. To quote, "This is why we're falling behind." One of my coworkers said through gritted teeth, "Can't you see it's raining?" But before we could explain why we couldn't paint in the rain, the boss yelled, "You're scared of a little drizzle? You shouldn't be a muralist. Get back to work." My coworker shot me a look and I knew immediately. The malicious compliance was on. The three of us got back to the scaffolding and began working. The boss smugly said, "See, that wasn't so hard," and drove off. We kept smiling to ourselves. When the boss returned that afternoon, he was horrified. The rain had washed the paint down the building, leaving paint streaks dripping on the rest of the mural. Basically, the whole mural, 3 weeks worth of work, was ruined. We noticed him staring slack-jawed, but we kept painting. Then he called us down and cursed us out with all sorts of profanities. When asked, "What the heck are you guys thinking?" My coworker replied, "Well, you were the one that told us to do it." My boss's face turned beet red. Then he asked, "Well, how the hell are we gonna fix this?" My coworker simply replied, "You mean how are you gonna fix this? We've decided to all quit." And indeed, we had while we were working in that rain. We packed up our tools as the boss went from yelling to begging to yelling again. We just ignored him. That was the last day we were on site. I felt so relieved the moment I got home. The aftermath. I got a call a week later from my old boss. I was ready to tell him that I won't come back to work, but it turned out that he was just checking in on me. He apologized for what happened. He also told me that my new boss lost the contract and had to fork out the money to repaint the whole building wall blank again so another muralist can take over. The company is floundering now. The new boss can't find anyone to replace us, and he probably never will. What he didn't realize was that finding any good muralists willing to work for a company is difficult, let alone a team. Most muralists are more than happy to self-employ. More importantly, not many people have the skills and patience as well as physical abilities to create beautiful landscape works of art from great heights. I give it another few months before the company completely shuts down. My coworkers and I still keep in touch. They got a few projects in the works from clients that they knew during their time with the company. I help out now and then, but I'm still pretty burnt out from the experience, so I think I'll look for other jobs for now. I live in a city that has some amazing murals, and I've always been awed by the stuff that artists create. I used to be really into graffiti art when I was younger, and luckily got to meet some local artists that have since gone on to work for large brands and sports teams. Like the old saying goes, you can't rush art, and you probably shouldn't rush great employees either. Please resend my tickets! This past weekend, the dance company I do box office work for had hit its final show run for our season. We do a few runs a year, always renting out a large theater for them, which is separate from the main box office building. This means we don't have free access to the physical box office at the theater. We have time frames when we can be in there. Fairly standard, but it limits our availability on show days. So my manager set up an automated email for incoming inquiries just saying, "We're busy, we may be unable to get back to you right away." Again, very standard for our organization. On Saturday, early afternoon, I'm still at home and I check ticket sales in the inbox just to see if there are any super outstanding issues. A woman named Cynthia had sent an email saying she never received her tickets for the show that evening. I roll my eyes, but it's not a real problem. I look her up, see she made a purchase earlier that day, and selected that she wanted her tickets emailed. So I just sent her a reply saying the tickets should be attached to your order confirmation, but the email may have wound up in your spam folder, so please check there. An hour or so later, I get a response saying there's only a receipt, no confirmation email. Can you please resend the ticket? At this point, I'm just assuming that she's likely just a senior age patron, and she has no idea how technology works. That's fine, it happens a lot, so I just resend the tickets. That'll be the end of it, I figure. An hour or so later, I leave for the theater not thinking of it anymore. When I arrive, I open up my email though. I have 5 new emails in my inbox that weren't there since I last checked. 4 from Cynthia, 1 from my manager. The first email she sent said, "No, I don't want that ticket. That was just the test order I did to check to see if I get emails. I want the tickets I initially ordered." 6 minutes after that, Cynthia said, "Can you please resend?" 3 minutes later, "Please resend." 8 minutes later, "Please resend my tickets and stop responding saying it may take some time to get back to me." The email from my manager said that Cynthia emailed her twice requesting her tickets be resent. All that in a 17-minute time span listed above. Again, I roll my eyes and sigh in frustration, because this woman never specified that she had multiple orders, and instead of trying to contact us first, she just bought another ticket to test things, and went on to be unclear in her communication. Plus, she clearly doesn't understand what automatic reply is. But I figured if she wanted to get snippy about it, I'd just be petty in return. I found her real tickets and sent an email with them. Half an hour later, and no response from her. I resent them again. 15 minutes later, I sent them again. I resent the tickets a total of 7 times. I figured at least one for each time she asked them to be sent, right up until 15 minutes before the show began, when a woman in her mid-40s or so approached the box office waving her smartphone with her tickets visible on them. "Hi, I'm Cynthia. I just wanted to know what was wrong with your email and tickets system today." "Oh, nothing was wrong, ma'am." "Well, I kept trying to get my tickets sent, and it just kept saying the same message over and over." "Oh, that's our generic automated reply. We set it up for show days in case we can't help someone on time." She looks sheepish for a moment, but recovers. "Oh, right, that makes sense. But why did it take so long to find the right tickets?" "Well, you had multiple orders and never specified which order it was, so I just assumed it was the order that you made earlier today, and I didn't really consider the one you made back in March. I apologize for not making the connection." Again, a sheepish look comes across her face, but she presses on. "But when you did find the right order, why did I keep getting tickets sent? I got several emails with the tickets and one just sent a couple minutes ago." "Oh, well, you were so eager in the emails earlier, but when I did send the tickets, you never responded. So I wasn't sure if you were getting them or not. So I just wanted to make sure that you were, in fact, getting your tickets." By this point, she made all the connections in her head. If she had just been clear and patient with her request, she could have gotten her tickets right away, saved money, she never asked for a refund on the test order, and wouldn't have gotten bombarded with a bunch of emails. She thanked me for the assistance and went on to enjoy the show, while my manager and I just looked at each other and chuckled. I really want to dislike the ticket woman the OP speaks about in this post, but I'm not gonna lie, ordering tickets, especially the day of a show, can be pretty stressful. Although I do think she should have just chilled and waited for a response, or went to the box office earlier in case of any issues. Luckily, this woman did seem to come around and hopefully learned a lesson in patience. Okay, I'll downgrade your computer. This was quite a few years ago, but I used to do IT for a company that was suddenly experiencing rapid growth. This meant many new employees got new out-of-the-box computers, but it also meant that it was hard to always be fully stocked. The shipping was quick, and they basically ordered the exact amount of computers required to fill the new employee needs. Employees before this obviously had computers that may be a couple years old. This story will feature one such employee. People involved in this story are me and Excel, the employee's main tool for this job, but this is what I'm going to be calling them. Excel had noticed many of the newer employees were getting brand new computers, and he felt upset he wasn't using one of these computers. He actually had been upgraded a year before, which was also before the rapid growth. So what was this upgrade? The year before, there was a budget to upgrade CAD workstation users to brand new ones. The company bought their equipment outright, so the former CAD workstations could easily be reused easily for non-CAD users. For those not familiar, these machines are often higher end as they are used for higher end visual works, virtual machines, etc. Our company paid about $2,500 each for these. This was one of those repurposed machines. It was currently 2-ish years old and had 16 gigs of RAM, quad-core ion processor, SSD, and a workstation video card that doesn't really benefit him. What was in the brand new computers people got? A dual-core CPU, 8 gigs of RAM, and a 500 gigabyte non-SSD drive. You can probably guess where this is going. How come most of the coworkers have better computers than me? I think your computer seems fine, but if you're having performance issues, I could take a look at it. It doesn't run as quickly as my coworkers. Could you show me quickly what yours is doing? He showed me he was pretty much ineffectively running his Excel, causing it to be bloated, with overly large file sizes considering it's Excel. He honestly should have had a few different Excel worksheets and files for this. This was more of an Excel limitation back then than a hardware issue. I talked about this a bit and he didn't want to listen. See, it's not running very well. I see that. Have you tried doing yes? And it didn't work. Could I get an upgrade? Honestly, your computer is likely better than your colleagues, so I don't think that this is going to help Excel. Would you mind if I helped you optimize your files? It's not gonna work. I tried. Can you give me a different computer? One like my coworkers have? Sure, if your manager sends me an email that says that it is vital to your work, I could have one ordered for you. That would be good. I'll have him email you. At this point, I thought it was done as most won't bother their managers about about this. If they do, most managers will automatically say no. I didn't want to downgrade the guy even though he was coming across as arrogant. Unfortunately, I was wrong. I guess it was in his department's budget, or he was just doing important work for the department. I already knew what was going to likely happen from this, so I immediately forwarded the email to my manager. I then promptly called my manager as well and gave him the quick rundown. I told him this is obviously going to come back later, he's using Excel wrong and won't listen. Why didn't I have him use his file on another employee's computer to show him, you may ask? Privacy and confidentiality reasons. You're only supposed to use your assigned computer except in certain circumstances. So fast forward to him getting his new computer. He failed to back up his data, so I had to help him retrieve that. Also, how long did his computer last before he was upset it wasn't working as well, you may ask? 1 hour. Unfortunately, I was busy because, as I said, the company was growing fast, and I couldn't run to help him over something with this type of priority. He could do his job, just not optimally because of his Excel knowledge. I had him go through service desk knowing it's coming back to me eventually. He had to wait about 2 days. He begged for his other computer back. At this point, I was done playing this ridiculous game. He was taking way too much of my time, and I'm not swapping it again. Also, the computer was just billed to his department. I don't really want to unassign it and reassign it with his old one and have it put back into inventory pool for his department. Do you mind if I actually test for a minute to see if I can fix your Excel first? It's not gonna do anything. I use this program every day. I know what I'm doing. Okay, but I need to test it because if I don't, my manager's going to ask me why I didn't before I swapped again. Note, my manager trusts me and doesn't care, but I need to make it clear that this is a requirement without creating a conflict such as him thinking I believe he's lying. Sure, whatever, I'm gonna go grab a coffee. Actually, can you grab a chair and stay for a couple of minutes? I proceed to quickly check Excel file to avoid breaking reference and make his basically 10 megabyte 32-bit garbage Excel file into 5 different files. Honestly, these files are still pretty bad, but suddenly Excel isn't hanging or freezing for a minute or more anymore. How did you do that? Is there any way that you can combine the files for convenience? I think you should keep the files separate. When a file gets too bloated, Excel struggles to handle them. At this point, half of his department is looking at us. I can tell if you are trying not to laugh. I think they kind of realized that this guy was kind of rude to me before and was the cause of his own issue. Oh, well, okay, I guess, is what Excel said. I stand up and tell him to have a good day and leave. He didn't even say thanks. I got confused just listening to the story a bit because I don't have that much knowledge of Excel. Not something I ever really used, but separating files just seems as confusing to me as well. But then again, it's not something I use all the time, so the confusion is expected. Can't say the same thing for annoying employees though. If you use a program almost daily, it's probably best that you try to learn the ins and out of it as well, just to save yourself some embarrassment. You want me to call the tenant? Sure, I'll call the tenant. This story is about a job that I just quit. I doubt someone there uses Reddit, so I'll share it with you. Here we go. We were moving to another office, so things were chaotic. Days were really hot, so when we discovered our new office didn't have AC, we were crushed. We tried to work there anyways, but 2 members started getting dizzy and weak, so we called our boss. He was solving some problems on our previous location and told us to go home and not come in the next day, since he'd buy a new AC and install it then. We were happy with this free day off, and my boss went on his way to buy the equipment. This story is about what happened when he bought it. So this new office was somewhere fancy. Our boss was a tenant in this building, and there were doctors, lawyers, dentists, and all kinds of fancy people. Everyone wore suits and ties, since most of the tenants were rich. The building workers were super polite, mostly because some of the tenants were rude to them, acted entitled, and tried to get them fired for petty reasons. Anyways, my boss called some of his friends and said, "Hey, would you help me install an AC on my new office? I'll pay you with some booze." And they accepted. Since it was, again, really hot, my boss and their friends were there the next morning wearing tank tops, shorts, and sandals. They were greeted by someone who worked there. I don't remember his name, but I'll call him assistant. That knew who my boss was and would follow him around, answer his questions, and help him with any info about the building or the room. You know, a good human being. He was supposed to know all the tenants, so everybody liked him. But I guess he wasn't in a leadership position because his workmates didn't seem to enjoy his presence. He didn't seem to care though. So assistant greeted my boss and followed him to our new room. My boss said he saw the receptionist look at him with disgust because of their clothes, but didn't think much about it. What were we supposed to do? There was only one entrance. They went upstairs and started working. Eventually, my boss noticed that he forgot some tools in his car. No problem. The assistant went with him. They got it and came back up. At reception, again, Mr. Receptionist looked annoyed. Meh. My boss, who I admit wasn't the most organized, noticed he forgot to buy something. Okie dokie. Assistant, always happy to help, followed him to the entrance and waited for him to buy his tools somewhere near and come back. Again, as they got in, receptionist looked mad. For the third time, my boss had to go through reception to do something and get something he forgot. Assistant went with him, assuring him it was okay and that he had every right to come and go as he pleased. But this time, receptionist had enough. When my boss got into the building, he saw receptionist come in his direction, fuming. But he didn't say anything to my boss. Instead, he went straight to assistant and, completely ignoring my boss, said something along the lines of, "What the hell is this? Why are those people coming and going and there's no order in this building? Why don't you do anything?" Assistant just looked at him and said calmly, "I'm sorry, but they need to make as many trips as necessary to install the new AC today, so that tomorrow a team can come work without any interruptions or discomfort." "I don't care," said the receptionist. "Those people are annoying our staff, our guests, and our tenants. This building is no place for them. If you don't stop this mess right now, I'm gonna call the tenant and tell them you're allowing such people in his new office." I think you can guess what happened next. According to my boss, the assistant's face lit up and smiled. "Oh, really? Please do. You can talk to the tenant right now if you like." He then turned to my boss, who just looked at him with an innocent, "Yes, how can I help you?" face. My boss said the receptionist's face went white. He tried to say something but couldn't pick the words, so he just left in a hurry. My boss and assistants laughed for a while about it and went back to the office. The AC got installed and we worked the next day with ease. Okay, I don't want to assume here, but I want to say these were Latinos in the story. I could totally be wrong, but I got Latino family members and paying in booze is a total form of payment. And a majority of them could also tell you stories similar to the one that this OP just posted. Please stop judging people by their appearance. Some people just want to feel comfortable in what they wear. A smelly, disgusting customer comes into my store. I use an entire bottle of hand sanitizer to get clean. So have you ever seen one of those retail workers that washes their hands religiously? Allow me to give you a prime example as to why. I used to work in a store's phone center, which is right by the front door. Since it was located so close to our most used entry, it would sometimes get pretty warm when the doors would constantly open and all the people came in and out. So we had a little fan on our counter by the register, and it was behind a divider, so it was out of view of the customers. I was working up there one day when this old guy, maybe 60 to 65, comes in for me to help him with his phone. As he came in, I noticed he looked kind of sweaty, which was understandable as it was a fairly hot day this day. Also, I thought his hair looked kind of sweaty, but no, his hair was just extremely greasy, to the point where I saw it literally dripping. It was so wet from grease that it looked like he had just dunked his head in water about 30 seconds before walking into the store. He gets to the counter and I attempt to greet him as I do all customers, but I had to stop and pause halfway through to suppress the immediate urge to instantly vomit when his smell hit me. So it probably sounded something like this. "Hi, how can I help you?" I'm not exaggerating when I say it smelled like someone had taken a porta potty that had been used for a week at a state fair, dumped it in the middle of a highway for a week during an extreme heat wave. And then this guy came along and just rolled around in it. Also, he brought flies with him, as if they followed him. There was like 5 or 6 of them just flying around him. It's not a stretch to say that smelling raw sewage would have been preferable. I subtly pointed the fan as much toward him and away from me as I could without making it obvious, so it would be blowing the nose hair singeing smell away from me. I tried to continue as best I could, while leaning as far back as I could without looking like I was trying to get away from him. He told me his phone wasn't calling out and he wanted me to fix it. Now normally I don't have a problem holding a phone if a customer hands it to me, but this phone was the most disgusting thing I've ever been handed. He told me he had only bought it a couple of months prior. He pulled out a flip phone that was supposed to be black in color. What he actually pulled out was something that was once upon a time most likely black, but now was one giant stain that was covered with dried drops of brownish mysterious liquid. It also had this yellowed screen, which should not be able to happen in the very short span of time that he had it. I told him to just set it down on the counter for me, and I used only my fingertips to touch his phone and use the speakerphone when I tested a call. I got his phone fixed and sent him off happy. Then I looked at the fingertips that I used, and I'm not kidding you when I say it looked like I had been handling rusty nails for hours, which at this point I almost vomited. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that I almost used an entire bottle of hand sanitizer, and then I went to the restroom to scrub my hands until every bit of brown was off and my hands were completely red, followed by another hand drenching of sanitizer. I now impulsively sanitize my hands after every customer, regardless of whether or not I've touched anything from them. So next time you see someone obsessively washing or sanitizing their hands, just let them. You never know what mess they might have been through. Bro, this story is super relatable. I used to work retail, and man, I always say if you want to be a writer, work retail for a little bit so you can just see how people look and behave. It will be one of the best writing experiences you will ever get, but man, you will meet some characters and some might be as bad or worse than what this OP described. But let me ask you this question. Do you think this OP is a jerk for describing the customer the way they did? Let me know in the comments. My entitled boss tells me to follow the school handbook, so I send my entire class to his office. A few years ago, I retired from teaching in the UK, and I particularly love the stories of malicious compliance from schools and colleges. The recent threat of malicious compliance by students, which teachers had to take on the chin, brought back many memories. So I thought I'd share one that involved me and my students that happened my first year of teaching in 1981. I was fresh out of college and went to teach science in a secondary school in a rural town in which a lot of the students were the children of farmers and could be quite a challenge. I was only a few years older than some of them, and I was walking a very fine line between wanting to be liked and having a level of respect or authority, something which every new teacher will remember. I had replaced a popular teacher and had been given his tutor group, home group, and they weren't making it easy for me. To be fair, I probably deserved it. One of the main protagonists was a boy whose father was a successful farmer who happened to be the chair of governors and who was always keen to protest when he wasn't happy with something. We'll call him SH as those were his initials, and this was 40 years ago. The person involved in this story is head of year. I'll call him Gordy. He was an old-timer who had been unsuccessful when applying for deputy headship, and so there was a fair amount of resentment bubbling away which he tended to take out on children, and occasionally staff. Our school had a uniform policy, and I didn't have a problem with it as it acts as a bit of a leveler, especially when families can't afford the latest fashion, and as a tutor, it was my job to make sure my children were appropriately dressed, which I was doing to the best of my ability. Anyway, many of the children were in basic uniform, but they sometimes pushed the limits of what was acceptable. A common problem was whether footwear was trainers or shoes, but as long as their appearance was within the spirit of the rules, I was pretty much okay with it. Gordy, however, was not. At a team meeting, he went on a rant about how standards were being allowed to slip and that we were not being vigilant enough. He reminded us that it was our job to maintain the standards and ended with the demand that the next day we send him any child who was not in proper uniform. He waved the school handbook at us and told us if we didn't know what that was, we could find it there. I was well mad. I was walking a fine line with these students, and this wasn't going to make my life any easier. Cue the malicious compliance. I checked the school handbook very carefully, and the next morning I was ready. After I had taken the register, I announced that anyone not in proper school uniform would be reporting to Mr. Gordy's. This was followed by groans and protest. First of all, I sent a couple of goblins who were always pushing things too far, and then I began the malicious element. The regulation said black V-neck jumper. Yours has a round neck. Down you go. Is that a logo on your shirt? It says plain and white here. Off you go. The regs also specified plain black socks. They had been written some years earlier and never renewed. In the early 80s, many children wore white socks. I know. So down went all the white socks, and the atmosphere in the classroom got distinctly more hostile towards me. I then singled out SH, the class mouthpiece. Down you go, I insisted. He was furious and came right up to me and was almost in my face. He demanded to know why, so I told him. He was wearing black socks, but I had noticed that they had two colored bands around the top. I explained that the rules specifically said plain black socks and his were not plain. He was mad, and our eyes locked, and then it happened. To this day, I remember how his face changed and he realized that this was not me against him. It was us against Gordy. He then went around the class helpfully pointing out all the minor infringements that I had missed, and we ended up sending every child in the classroom apart from 3 or 4 who were in full uniform and who were frankly disappointed not to be sent down. Gordy had gone hard on the first few children who went down, and then he couldn't treat the others differently. So he got it in the neck from parents who didn't appreciate being contacted about striped socks. Shortly after this, the rules were rewritten to be more flexible as long as the spirit of the uniform was upheld. From that day on, I had a fantastic tutor group. SH became the head boy and was a credit to the school, and worked as hard for me as any child I taught since. And in 40 years of teaching, despite many instances of malicious compliance, I never managed to top the time my students collaborated with me in an act of malicious compliance. You gotta love when students and teachers actually get along. I think being teachers is one of the hardest jobs you can have because you almost have to fight for respect from the students. I remember the first teacher that actually won me over. It was my 10th grade English teacher. I thought he was going to teach us all the same boring stuff like Hamlet or the Odyssey. I mean, he did eventually. But he started the class off with teaching us about Fight Club, the book. I don't mean that we all just started fighting each other. But it was a breath of fresh air to see a teacher teach something cool for once. And from that point on, he had gained a lot of respect from his students. He was pretty awesome. Am I the jerk? Customer gets angry at me for being late to a delivery. So I worked for a delivery company a few years ago. The company I worked for often called the customers the day before a delivery with a 2-hour window for delivery times. If we were late, we'd call the customer to inform them of the situation and apologize for the inconvenience. If we were early, we would also call and explain if they wanted the delivery time frames to move up. And if we arrive at the site when no one is home, we would wait 15 to 20 minutes, give a call to the number and leave a "we're sorry we missed you" door hanger and move on to the next delivery. This often led to complaints about people saying that we didn't show up to the house on time and never called or left a note. So we'd often wait 30 minutes. A full 10 to 15 minutes longer than company policy. For deliveries, that 30 minutes is a long time and adds up quickly, sometimes pushing an 8-hour shift to 12 to 14 hours or longer. So please be on time as companies schedule all deliveries around those time frames and can quickly delay all deliveries that come after yours. So one house in particular, we arrived on time, we knocked, we called the number, no one answered, and we scoped out around the house as well, even calling out to see if anyone was in the backyard. Nothing. 30 minutes later, I make the final call, leave a door hanger and take a picture of the house from the street for good measure with the door hanger in view. I inform the dispatcher that it was a no-show and we move on. Oh, and I did forget to mention that missing a delivery means that you have to reschedule the delivery and pay to re-deliver. Thankfully, this was the second to last delivery and we felt pretty good as we could finally have our lunch around 4 p.m. We also felt pretty good about customers having to pay twice for delivery. 4:30 p.m., the office calls us back saying that a customer was mad. That she didn't have a call, she didn't have a door hanger or note. She said that we didn't even show up to the house. My boss gives me her number to call her back because he's done talking with her. He's a spineless wimp and he doesn't take no for an answer. We are mad because we were already supposed to be back at the warehouse by now. I ring the customer number and she immediately starts laying into me about how we didn't show up and how there is no note and that she has security cameras to prove it. I'm pretty sure I know who this customer is, but I still need to confirm as her number isn't what is on my paperwork. If it was a digit or two off or maybe just the wrong area code, it could be the store's fault for recording the wrong information. Trust me, it happens a lot, so I always make sure to confirm everything when we set up delivery. One time we got an address for an abandoned building and another time we got another state and we don't cross state lines. So for security's sake, I have her confirm her address. Except for the phone number, which we put her friends as a contact information as she couldn't leave work. So we backtracked to the house because we were still in the area and the boss telling us to talk to the customer basically means that we are going to do the delivery. Sure enough, everything is exactly how we left it. This time, when I go knock on the door, I look up to see the security camera and give it a little wave. And to my surprise, 2 men show up to the door looking disheveled, like something out of a rom-com. I'm not one to judge, but this certainly isn't the worst thing I've ever seen when someone answered the door. But come on guys, at least fix yourselves up first. They completely avoid eye contact as we complete the delivery. I usually shake hands with customers after jobs complete, but this time it was just a small wave. When we get back to the warehouse, to my surprise, my boss calls us over after we finish cleaning up the truck. A very pregnant woman is waiting for us. She quickly gives us a hug and apologizes for getting fresh with me over the phone. I pull her over to the side and she explains to me that her husband is on deployment and that this is the first time doing a big move by herself and how she is scared moving into a new city while being pregnant. I explained to her that everything is going to be all right and that we were in the neighborhood anyways and how I completely understood how hard it must be. I have had to help my friends pick up and move while her husband was on deployment as well. I did say for the future, maybe get someone else to wait for the delivery. She laughed saying that she was going to murder her brother when she got home. After that, I always try to calm down customers as much as possible, as some of them might be going through very rough times in their lives, and if I could help smooth out this stressful point in their lives, I would. This is one of those stories where you get reminded that people just have bad days sometimes. It happens to the best of us. I'm glad this woman apologized to the men because she knew she was in the wrong. I think if more people could admit that they were in the wrong, the world would be a better place. Am I the jerk? I almost ruined half of the warehouse I work at. Almost 20 years ago, I'm now 37 male, I used to work for a very large retailer with lots of stores around the country. I worked in the warehouse collecting stuff and sending them to other stores. I was one of the guys in charge of the groceries section of the warehouse. We had these collecting forklifts. I don't know the exact name of them, but they had the forks for the pallets behind the machine and driven from the front. Kind of like the truck of forklifts. These were quite heavy machines. One week, the warehouse was undergoing some renovations and they installed new pallet shelves for our grocery section. The work had already started on the weekend, and when we came into work on Monday, most of the new stuff was already done. These shelves were very long and very high, if you know what a large warehouse shelf looks like. These shelves were bolted into the floor and corner and leg protection covers were added so no one would damage the legs. Damaging them could cause the shelves to fall like dominoes, like one of those viral accident videos. While starting my day's first job, I noticed that one of the shelves was missing the corner protection. I immediately called my boss and informed them about it. He had said that the installation team had already left because they were in a hurry and it's no big deal, that they would get them to install it later. I told him that there is no protection on the leg and it's right in the corner of the main corridor with lots of forklift traffic. He didn't really care and just told me to be careful, so I shrugged and went back to doing my job. On the afternoon, I had completely forgot about the whole thing. I was driving toward that particular corner like usual. What I didn't notice though was a relatively large spill on the floor as I was taking the corner to an aisle. This spill was later confirmed to be water. The forklift truck thing I was driving had its steering on the front of a single rubber wheel, and the warehouse floor was painted. I completely lost control of the machine in the puddle. I hit directly the unprotected corner leg of the new shelf. The whole shelf was shaking and the shelf corner leg actually completely separated from the bottom plate and bent in a 45-degree angle. Also, most of my full grocery pallet toppled and spread all across the corridor. I immediately jumped back because I thought the whole shelf will fall. Luckily, it wasn't completely fully stocked at the time, so it didn't. The sound of the impact attracted lots of workers to see what was going on. My boss soon arrived and wasn't happy. He tried to blame me, but I told him he was aware of the lack of protection as I had told him about it earlier. Also, one of my colleagues was near when I told my boss this, so he confirmed that my boss was aware of this. The reason for the water puddle was not found, but it was found to be the cause of the accident. Later that day, when I was continuing my work, I drove past the same spot where this happened and the installation team was there replacing the leg and installing corner protectors. I guess they weren't that busy after all. I don't know if my boss had any aftermath with this incident. So I worked in a warehouse setting for 5 years and man, I was always waiting for something like this to happen. People play around on those forklifts way too much. Like I said, I never really had a big accident like this one, but I did see people come in and arrest one of our forklift drivers during my shift because he was caught stealing a bunch of electronics from the store. Good times. How I helped people in a snowstorm with my new truck. This is from a while ago when I was a fresh entry into the workforce. Forgive me for the long story, but I was inspired to contribute a nice positive story. I worked at a smaller upscale grocery store in my hometown to make some money to pay for my loan, which came from my parents, for the truck I had just bought. It was a big Dodge with a bunch of miles, but I lifted it and put some big mud tires on it. I absolutely loved it. Trust me, this is important. As a part of my job, and as one of the few front-end workers with a license, I had taken up the task of inter-store deliveries on Saturdays. I absolutely loved it. I would show up at 7:30 or whenever it was, go around my store saying hi to everybody as I collected their deliveries, loaded them up in the company van, and got on my way. I could play my music while cruising around town, and it was a blast. My normal route would take me to 3 or 4 stores, and I would be back to the store quickly. Sometimes, however, I would also have some catering or personal orders to take out. Most of the time, it was just a bag or two of groceries for someone homebound or a few trays of stuff for a party. Nothing crazy. Where this story really begins is a crazy snowy Saturday morning. At least 5 inches had fallen overnight and it was not letting up anytime soon. I arrive at my work and my manager basically tells me they don't expect anybody in store and the deliveries were scrapped, but they had orders. I go to pull the van around and it's not happy. The diesel barely started in the first place, but with the snow it simply wouldn't make it up the very slight incline to the dock. I parked it and tell my manager there is no way I'm getting on the streets with that. He was fine with that, but he still let me know the orders. I easily had a van worth of groceries for the retirement/sick/elderly home in our town due to the snow, as well as a huge catering order for a celebration of life at the local VFW. We thought about it for a second before I pitched an idea. I happen to have a big truck with 4-wheel drive, and the back seat happens to have a fold-out tray. Manager okayed me using my personal vehicle, and we started loading. Bags in the covered bed, but the hot food in the cab with heat on max. Filled to the brim, I began my journey. The first stop was the home, and it went smoothly. I always help bring all the groceries in this stop, and today it felt like Santa Claus on Christmas. Every door I knocked on was met with people absolutely glowing that they got their food for the week, and I, allegedly, received like 8 pounds worth of treats from them. I was already filled to the brim with happiness, and little did I know that that would be the more normal one. The second stop was the VFW, so I make the 30-minute drive and arrive. The parking lot is unplowed and easily a foot of snow. So I park on the street and walk up to the door. The lady that greets me is ecstatic that their food actually came, as they were sure that no deliveries would be made that day. When she announced to the room that food's here, about 12 men, all minimum 65 plus, jump to their feet and walk over. I let them know I can pull up to the door and they said, "Nope, we got it." I opened the door to my truck and they assembled a bucket line to get the massive load of trays back inside. They finished faster than it would have taken me to get to the door, all while standing in a ton of snow. As soon as the food was in, they invited me inside. I obliged and followed them in. I ended up spending easily an hour, don't worry boss, I took it off the clock, listening to stories from this big group of friends and offered at least a dozen drinks of booze. It filled me with extreme amounts of joy and it definitely helped stroke my ego that the old ladies were so thankful for the young man with the truck. When it was time to go, a few offered substantial amounts of money in cash tips, which I did not take. However, they did offer a bag of pulled pork, which I did. I know this is long, but it is one of my favorite memories of all the time working at that place. It was usually a strange feeling to be counted on when doing deliveries on normal days, but on this day, there was nothing else I would rather do than 50 more deliveries like that. Thanks for reading. It's always nice to hear these heartfelt stories. They aren't the ones that make the headlines most of the times, or even the reason that people click on these videos or articles, but they do restore my hope in humanity. And I wish we got more of them. Boss Karen says we must put in 3 months notice before quitting, so I leave the next day. So this particular story is a screenshot of an email sent to the OP. Hello all, happy Wednesday. I am not so happy this morning. Yesterday, 3 of you submitted your 2 weeks notice. All 3 of you claimed it was because of better opportunities, not even thinking about the fact that some of your coworkers have lives outside of the job and children. Your better opportunities, doubtful, we pay you all fair wages, are really worth affecting your team members' quality of life? I myself have children, and instead of being at their band recital this week, I will be sitting at work posting job offers on Indeed instead. This is outrageous. You all need to speak amongst yourselves and plan these things out so you don't leave a company high and dry all at once. The lack of consideration from employees I previously had a different impression of is astounding. The new rule in our employee handbook will be updated to now requiring a 3 months notice, since that's how long it took to train you. You will give 3 months notice and train your replacement in the meantime. And your 3-month notice will serve as your consent for your base pay to be lowered by $6 an hour. Since you will be leaving, your reduction in pay should be no issue. That's how this works from now on. You can thank your insubordinates for this. You can also thank them for the extra 30 hours of overtime per week you will be assigned to do until I find new hires. and they are fully trained. I expect full cooperation from the team moving forward. This photo is connected with this. I laughed out loud at this email. Holy hell. Luckily I have 3 jobs and can afford to give my effective immediate notice when I show up tomorrow. LOL. I find it funny that the OP typed laugh out loud and then put LOL at the end. Anyways, I would have quit this job so fast. Actually, I kinda did screw over my terrible boss on my last weekend at my old job. But that is because he was trying to get me fired because he felt like I disrespected him when I said the words, "Hey, I'm on vacation next week and you don't have anyone scheduled as leads for these days, so you need to figure that out." And by telling my boss that he needed to figure something out that he was not aware of, this sent him on a mission to find some dirt on me to get me fired. I should really tell the whole story someday, but I'm glad this OP dipped out immediately from this terrible work environment. Am I the jerk? I got my nephew grounded for the summer. About a month ago, my jerk nephew kicked me in the ankle after I had surgery. He laughed after he did it and he even knew that it was painful. So I decided to get my revenge on him by hiding a bunch of booze cans under his bed. I found out earlier today that his mom just found those cans, and now he's grounded for the summer. I kind of feel bad, but not that bad. That's pretty much the story, everybody, but the reason why I wanted to include this is because I absolutely love the edit to this story. Edit? I don't feel bad at all. Sometimes you do not need to have a long story for it to be a great story. But let me know. Was this guy a jerk? Shoe store Karen demands we accept dirty shoes. Gets denied by 3 managers. Long story, but I felt like sharing. I currently work in a shoe department area. This all started with this guy wanting to purchase shoes that I clearly remember just putting out for display. Brand new. I looked down at the shoes and asked him if he was sure he wanted those exact ones because they looked a bit tight on him. I can tell he thought about it for a second before Mother Dearest said something along the lines of, "They're fine. If you like them, go ahead and just get them. They're your usual size, so it doesn't matter. You just buy them. I think they're perfect for you." So of course the guy listened to her and decided he wanted to take them anyways and wear them out. I asked him again, warning him that if he wears them out and damages them, there's no returning them. This time he didn't even think, he just looked at his mom and said it was okay. Alright, whatever. I ring him up and they leave. Skip 2 days later and the same guy comes in wanting to return the shoes that he just bought because they didn't fit him from one side. When I open the box and take a look at them, they were used, like really used. I looked at him and he immediately began claiming that they had been sold to him like that, and the reason why they were messed up is because they were on display, not because he used them. The look on his face when I told him I was the one that sold him these shoes was kind of hilarious. I guess he thought I was another employee and I would just fall for this. Of course, I refused due to it being company policy that we never sell messed up shoes, and Mother Karen wasn't happy. All I could do was offer to stretch them a bit, but Mother K refused, calling them defective because her son was the same size in other brands of shoes, yet those didn't fit, and were very uncomfortable. It wouldn't have been a problem to return or exchange them if he hadn't brought them back as if he had just walked a mountain trail. So of course Karen starts making a scene and not allowing anybody to speak, demanding I give her son, the one who she convinced to take the shoes in the first place, back his money. Nope, I say again. So she asked to speak with the manager. I called for one, and when manager number 1 came, she tried to explain to Karen that we couldn't take back the shoes in that state and also offered the stretching. Now she was yelling and arguing with manager number 1 for almost 10 minutes, then demanding to speak with someone else who would actually help her. Manager number 2 is then called and number 1 leaves, too early. Mother Karen turns to me and my coworker yelling at us, calling us names, so we just turn our backs to her like we're instructed to do while waiting for a manager. She begins to forcibly poke my coworker, trying to turn her around before said coworker leaves to help someone else. Unfortunately for me, Mother Karen became worse, getting in my face and getting even closer whenever I would back up. She started yelling and calling me rude, saying that I would do the same if it were my money and how she returns used shoes all the time in all stores, including this one. All while her son sat there waiting and the father scrolling through his phone acting as if nothing was going on. About 5 minutes passed and manager number 2 came and with no surprise told the woman the exact same thing. But this time around, Mother Karen agrees to leave the shoes to stretch before peacefully leaving. I honestly don't know what number 2 told her to get her to calm down. My guess is that she may have implied that we would accept the return when we weren't listening. Skip to another 2 or 3 days and the guy comes back to pick up and try on the shoes. The first thing he does after sitting down is call Mother K, who tells him to speak with another manager, number 3. who at the end tells him that we can't give him his money back and all we can do is simply stretch them out a bit more. And that there was no arguing with her because she herself was the actual shoe area manager. He grabs his shoes, says thanks, but there was no need because he could do it himself at home. He walks out the doors and has never been seen again. Boy, I hope they never come back. So, I'm not gonna lie, my mom had a little Karen in her when I was younger. I have vivid memories of her asking for a manager and me being very embarrassed. I remember calling her out on this one time and saying, "Why do you have to be like that, Mom?" And she hit me with something along the lines of, "You can't let people take advantage of you." So I don't know if something actually happened that day because my mom isn't the type of person to try and get stuff for free, or if she just had a Karen face. Who knows, but I think we can all agree that retail Karens are pretty terrible. I need to take my days off, if you say so. Have I mentioned how much I hate shore posting? For those that haven't seen my previous malicious compliance, I will create a brief background. During my time in the Navy, I was posted to a shore-based workshop with more people than it needed. Micromanagement ensues. So on this given day in the workshop at the morning muster, the chief announces, "Anyone with more than 30 days annual leave needs to start taking leave to get their leave balance down." Me with 75 days at the time, why? "It's a directive from the Chief of Navy." So me being me, I go and look up the books, specifically the Pay and Conditions Manual, aka Pac-Man. Fast forward 3 days, I get called into the chief's office. "Why haven't you put in for leave?" "I don't want to." "Didn't you hear me say it was a directive from the Chief of Navy?" "Yes, but that directive isn't lawful." You could see the chief's blood pressure visibly rising at this point. "What the heck do you mean?" "In accordance with Pac-Man," I quoted the specific reference, "I cannot be compelled to take annual leave," which was followed by him telling me to get out. To be honest, by this stage, I was just seeing how many buttons I could push. In that workshop, we had to make our own entertainment. 2 hours later, I was called up to my divisional officer, DO. The conversation was more or less carbon copy of the conversation I just had with my chief. Perhaps a little less 4-letter Anglo-Saxon verbiage. For the next week, I didn't hear a peep, but I knew this wasn't over. I have planned the next few things I can do and will do depending on how my chain of command proceeds. The next week, one of my petty officers, being from New Zealand originally, we naturally called him Kiwi, came back from leave. We had worked together a few times and had a good rapport as a result, so my chief sent him to try and thwart my evil plans. "Filigrees, daddy, we need a chat." "Hey Kiwi, they sending in the big guns to beat me down now, huh? So you know what this is about?" "Yep. Do you realize they're talking about charging you?" "What's the charge?" "Failure to comply with a lawful general order." "The order isn't lawful. The charge wouldn't stick. Even if it did, what would the punishment be? Stoppage of leave?" "You were just doing this to cause problems, aren't you?" "No, I genuinely don't want to take leave. I can't really afford to go anywhere, so I'd just be spending a week sitting on my butt bored as hell. I can do that here and not lose any of my accrued leave." "Okay, you don't have to take all of your leave at once, just start taking some. It could take the heat off the entire chain of command, and those above might be less inclined to launch you into space without the benefit of a spacesuit." "Okay, Kiwi, I'll think about it." I had actually thought about it. When posted ashore, we accrue approximately 0.8 days of annual leave per fortnight, which works out to be a bit over 1.6 days a month. So a few days later, I put in a leave request through the online system for the first Monday of the next month. My leave dates were Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. So A, it looks like I am taking 3 days, but I'm only taking 1, and B, so I couldn't get roasted for duty on that weekend. Leave approved. I enjoy my 3-day weekend. The next month, the same thing. The sharper ones in the crowd see what's happening. My leave balance is still going up, not down, just slower than it was before. After about 3 months, I get asked why I'm not putting anything in the reason for leave section of the online forum. I point to the line on the forum that says quite clearly that the reasons don't need to be provided for annual leave requests. Please just put something in that space. So the next month, reason for leave, mental health day. 2 months after that, then, please don't put that. The next month, reason for leave, they are making me do this, I don't want to. That made them angry. The ear blistering I got for that one is definitely not PG, but the point was made on both sides. From then on, my 1 day off a month was leave management. They were so happy when I got a C posting later that year. I still wonder if they ever realized that I wasn't actually getting my leave balance down. What did I do with my Mondays off? Day drinking. I actually found a venue near the biggest market in the state that had spicy waitresses from 9 a.m. to noon on Mondays. Plus, a few other places had the similar service over lunch and early afternoon. Good times. I've never understood people that don't use their vacation days. I loved using my days, even if it meant me just going home and chilling. I guess everyone is just built different, but any day away from work is a good day in my opinion. But also, I am similar to the OP because I often did things to annoy my bosses when they were trying to install stupid ideas that didn't make sense. At one point, our supervisors told us that we needed to start handwriting titles for each section we printed out on the papers. But that title was already clearly printed on the pages, so it was just double work. So I started writing the title as big as I could in the emptied white space. It was pretty petty, but so is forcing people to do nonsense work. You need me to file safety reports? You got it. As a bit of context to understand the story, I work at a big box retail store. Over the past few months, they've decided to weigh a heavier emphasis on store safety, where to find safety tips, how to do things safely, and also how to file safety reports. There's 2 people on the security and safety team. It was around last month that they really started cracking down on making sure that everyone in the entire store knew how to file safety reports. And the safety guy would spend a decent amount of time going around the store and quizzing people on how to file them, and also how other safety related things go. And as a side note, that will become important later. I am pretty good friends with him. Once I was taught how to do it, my non-malicious compliance began. Normally, working in retail, you do your job perfectly and there's no real need to file any sort of safety report because nothing bad happened. But with my special case, I like to put it as most others can do their jobs perfectly and be safe, but as a cart attendant, I can do my job perfectly and still get run over by a truck. Anyone who has ever worked in retail can confirm how stupid customers can be at times. Now, when you put them behind the wheel of a multi-ton vehicle, things can get very dangerous very quickly if you don't keep your guard up. And so, the safety reports began to pile up from me. Typically, it was about 2 per week. Most of the reports came from having to make a turn or cross through an intersection in the parking lot. I would be stopped waiting for a safe opportunity to continue, a vehicle would come to a stop, I would begin to continue moving carts, and then the car would suddenly start moving and narrowly avoid hitting me or my row of carts. And so I would just file those near-missed accidents. I never really thought much of it. That is until we had a safety huddle for the entire store. The team leader had announced that their quota for safety reports for the whole store was 1 or 2 a week. For me, it hit that in the past 2 weeks for the safety reports, and that's only the ones I made, not accounting for the other employees who were also filing. I was effectively giving the store its quota that it needed. I just thought it was funny and later on that day told the safety guy about it. In our conversation, he told me that I was actually filing so many safety reports that the head of the store actually got mad at him because I was filing so many of them. As he put it, they told me to teach you guys how to file safety reports, and here you are filing legitimate safety reports. I don't know why they're mad. As we later put it, management doesn't quite recognize how dangerous it can be in a parking lot. By this time, I had turned in my 2 weeks notice for separate reasons, but he gave me a new drive. Just the knowledge that I was effectively taking blows at upper management by just doing exactly what they wanted me to do was enough for me to switch from normal compliance to malicious compliance. Because the parking lot is practically my domain, nearly missed accidents are abound for me. In the time since then, I still made about 3 or 4 safety filings. Today was my 3rd to last day that I am scheduled to work at the store. Typical idiot drivers were abound, and I wind up making a safety report an hour into my shift, other than the fact that maybe some management is infuriated that I'm doing exactly what I should. Again, later on, I noticed the head of security and safety had left their office and was coming in my general direction. Because I was right next to the registers at the time, I thought that something else was going on. Just gave me the typical greeting, but I was surprised when they came towards me and stopped. He said to me, "Hey, if you ever have any more safety filings that deal with vehicles, just come to me or safety guy and report it directly to us." As soon as he left, I felt a sense of victory. My compliance in both malicious and non-malicious forms was too much for management, and they finally buckled under the weight of my safety reports filing. I was almost laughing at the thought. I told a few coworkers about it, and all of them agreed with me that it was hilarious. The guy with the most dangerous job just got asked to stop making safety reports on the most dangerous aspect of their job because they were filing so many. As I said before, I already have my 2 weeks in, and I only have 2 more working days to go. So I don't really care that this feels unusual and not right. I'm just happy to move on to a new job. And in case anyone is wondering, yes, I did have to go to the head of safety and security during my shift today because someone almost hit the cart pusher signature later in my shift. Edit 1. Looks like the reason they don't want me filing is because I filed 10 reports that had to deal with vehicles in a month, and the most they can do is tell me to slow down and pay attention. If you've never worked pushing carts before, you might not know how terrible a parking lot can be. I used to do this in my teen years, and man, I had cars almost hit me, people complain about carts hitting their cars, and sketchy people asking you random questions. But my worst experience was Army recruiters. This one time, an Army recruiter pulled up to me while I was pushing carts and said, "Hey man, you ever think about joining the Army?" To which I replied, "Nope, it's not my thing, man. Army has nothing that interests me." I don't think he liked that response, so he said, "You don't want to fight for your country?" Nope. At this point, he points to the passenger in his car, who was a woman in uniform, and says, "So you rather have this woman fight the battle for you?" To which I responded, it was her decision to join the Army. This didn't sit well with the recruiter, and he said, "Well, I think that's a female dog type of move." I just looked at him and told him to F off, and he just drove away. To this day, recruiters still annoy me. Good luck when you end up costing the organization serious revenue loss. I need a vacation. I'm a young brown woman in a company that's mostly older white men. Honestly, it's usually not that big of a deal because we work remote and I usually work with the same group of people. They know me and respect me now that I've earned it. I also work as a cross-functional role, where I lead company strategies specific to the initiatives that reach across the org, and of course, I deal with a lot of people ignoring me and confirming everything I say with my white male boss. My boss is pretty great. He will direct them right back to me and more than likely ignore them until they just come to me on their own. This time, I was working with individuals who were leading another team, who, if it matters, is definitely much more operational resource than myself. He and his team were already assigned by their manager, who also openly questions my age and experience constantly as a joke, to be my resources for the business critical project. However, either willfully or otherwise, are incapable of the smallest tasks and do it carelessly or break our workflows. They won't even Google/Stack Exchange to find the right answer, and honestly, it blows my mind. I've decided it's better to just do it for them and not take credit, because otherwise it would be weeks off track and still incomplete. Every week they have questions that the team lead sends in an email to my boss with me copied that I will answer because it's my freaking initiative. And mind you, I was hired for this role because I'm considered a thought leader in my field. And my boss does not have a clue to be able to answer it even if he wanted to, nor does he care. They will ignore me and do what they want anyways, which I will spend many nights fixing on top of my already 10-hour days. One day I got frustrated and asked, without anyone else on copy, why I was answering if they weren't going to even acknowledge it or change what they were doing. And he says to me with his manager on copy, "Because these questions aren't for you. These are strategy decisions that I need confirmation from insert my manager's name here." So I said, okay. I brought up the situation with my manager, who said, "Okay, we have to be careful with these fragile egos, as they were in the org for many years and probably didn't enjoy the direction from someone younger and new. He said that you've done your job, let them do theirs now." So I did. I stopped answering questions not directed at me, stopped doing their work for them, and started sending more detailed do's and don'ts to the team. I had my PM, a wonderful woman who was also being ignored, send weekly executive project updates to their manager as well as mine, etc. This report includes cost, impact, and risk. This was about 3 months back. Unbeknownst to the aforementioned team, I had already succeeded as far as my role was concerned. I presented my strategy along with expectations and assumptions, aka the do's and don'ts. I continued to share with the team and they continued to ignore at the end of the first phase of this work. This was almost about 3 months ago, coincidentally when I stopped fixing their mistakes and answering the questions not meant for me. Also, I raised concerns with their manager, who ignored them, with my manager on copy, who also ignored them. But he tends to do that. The only response I got was a joke from the team's manager saying, "I need a vacation." Cut to last week, a critical milestone for the project, the exact week I decided to take my PTO, because he's right, I do need a vacation. And just as I had said it would at this milestone, the entire project came crashing down. The data backups were of course not even saved appropriately, so we couldn't even recover that quickly. I, of course, did keep backups without letting the team know because I'm that petty. The biggest mistake you can make in an org like mine is to disrupt the business continuity and, let's just say, day, business was seriously discontinued, as I said it would be to anyone who would listen, because business continuity disruptions mean big losses. So anyway, I get a series of calls during my week off from my boss, and I didn't even have to explain the situation to him because he was on copy for most of this. I had done everything, including save the day with my backup data backup in case they screwed up. I got showered with praise from my superiors, and I took the opportunity to pitch my boss a new initiative to lead, and of course it was a hit as he was riding a wave of commendations for his department crushing it. I have relatively no clue what happened to the team that was working with me though. Guaranteed not much in the way of actual consequences, but you know, they were under fire and will be for a long time. Edit 1. Wow, thanks guys, your comments and messages were so nice to read. I'm a bit overwhelmed with responding to all of them, though here are a few things that I do want to respond to. I didn't bring race, gender, age into it. It was brought in and clearly not by me. Why would I when it puts me at a significant disadvantage? For the record, I do think I'm a good manager, colleague, and worker. My team and colleagues like me because I'm willing to get in there and work on what needs to be done rather than get on a series of calls to decide what needs to be done and wait for someone else to do it. And my managers like me because I'm honest, realistic, and tell it like it is. The reason this particular team did not want to work or listen to me is because they questioned my qualifications to be giving directions, which, mind you, is my role. But it certainly couldn't be because of my qualifications, because as I mentioned before, I had to prove myself in the industry to get where I am in the company to begin with. There really shouldn't be a question of whether I'm qualified at this point. So if my qualms are in control, what are the variables? The next thing is the thought leader bit. No, I do not speak to my coworkers about it or brag about my thought leadership, but I probably should have been more open about it. I worked hard to get published and speak at conferences. It's what got me this job. I made a lot of sacrifices and pushed myself way out of my comfort zone to make it happen. Regardless, I didn't mention it here to brag, but to demonstrate that I am, in fact, recognized by the industry at large to make these sort of strategic decisions, which was called into question. Why should I hide that? Humility? That's a strange concept when we're literally talking about my qualifications. As someone who has been in a lead position before and has had to deal with people that wouldn't pull their own weight or listen to orders, sometimes the best thing you can do is let them crash and burn. I let this happen one time when my co-lead was falsifying data in our industry, which is extremely bad to do. I got a phone call on my day off that he had got caught, and I never saw him again after that. Mail Karen demands a free taco, gets rejected by my manager instead. I work at a taco shop, not Taco Bell, known for its little hash brown circles instead of fries. But another thing we're known for is Taco Tuesday. Yesterday was that lovely day. My boss loves to schedule me for all the rushes. The first time we met, he decided he loved me taking orders and I would not do anything else. We're currently working with the skeleton crew, but we function astonishingly well. The boss owns a few different locations, and he'll often come in and talk to us about how there's one specific person on drive-thru just for making drinks. I'm normally the only one on the drive-thru, taking orders and dealing with everything at the window, plus anything else I'm tasked with taking care of that day. Like I said, skeleton crew, we're often picking up each other's slack. Anyways, for lunch rush, I spent 2 hours doing nothing but taking orders. So I knew when I came back for dinner, it would only get worse if I only knew. It was a boring Taco Tuesday, busy as any other, but just as many frustrating customers. Until we had the local high school drop in. Now normally one of two people make the schedule, Big Boss Man BB and Awesome Boss AB. For some reasons I'm not going to get into, AB wasn't available to make the last few weeks. And he's the one that normally keeps an eye out for school sporting events. Our store is the only one in the area open past 7 and 8 p.m. So when a sports event happens, everyone comes here and AB tries to schedule extra people for it. That did not happen this week. Instead, BB made the schedule and decided I'm good enough. I was not good enough. It was Taco Tuesday and some sport had just ended and the boys seemed to have won by the way they were celebrating. Carelessly spilling food everywhere, hanging out everywhere they could inside, leaving me giant messes to clean. It took me 20 minutes just to take the orders. No, like I've told everyone else in front of you, we don't have fries. Yes, asking if we have Whoppers is so hilarious after the first few guys. It was looking to be a normal group of high school boys, so I just let them be. I had been running back and forth on top of taking the drive-thru orders and dealing with those. I didn't even have energy to chit-chat with my regulars for a second. Finally, I get through the group of boys and their coaches, and I'm happy to finally finish customer service for a moment. Just as I'm about to take a moment to breathe in some fresh air that doesn't smell like sweat and Axe body spray, In walks someone who I'm going to refer to as annoying customer. Now sure, I've had Karens and such come in before. I know how to keep my cool and handle those people. This man would show me I still have a long way to go. Hi, welcome to Taco Place. What can I get started for you? Is it Taco Tuesday? Yes it is, but we recently upped our prices a few extra pennies. That's fine. I want 3. No cheese, extra everything else. Okay, that'll be, I don't know, it was like $6. But it's Taco Tuesday. Yes, sir, but the extra stuff costs a little extra and then there's the dollar for tax. No. I don't want anything extra, just no cheese, but extra lettuce and beef. Okay, that's still the price. No. You're not understanding me. I don't want cheese, and instead of cheese, I want extra beef and lettuce. Now, I've spent all day bending over backwards to help my coworkers and satisfy the customers the best I can. But I've been yelled at. This man lost all chances he had of getting any help. I understood he wanted extra beef and lettuce in this place of the cheese, but even when I substituted out, those things cost extra. So I take off the extra, give him his new total of 3 something, and away he goes, at this point probably thinking he won. I simply duck into the kitchen and say, hey Rose. Rose is our current night manager, and when BB and AB aren't there, she's in control. Rose had just seen the order come up on her screen, and I could see that the 3 taco shells were waiting to be made into tacos. She knew what was coming since our kitchen was right behind the front register. She had seen me get yelled at. She had also seen me almost fall apart trying to handle the giant rush of people by myself before him, and she already had a plan in mind. I told her, give him as little of everything you can without getting in trouble. She nods and I watch the tiniest scoop of beef set into these tacos and only 7 shreds of lettuce set on top. Honestly, I don't like handing out these types of tacos because I'm like, the customer paid for a taco, we should give them a taco. But not with this man. I felt he was lucky with how much he was getting. I give him the 3 tacos. I'm expecting him to return to our counter with the complaint in a minute, tops. But I'm surprised as I watch him happily enjoy said tacos. Maybe the plan wasn't as satisfying as I hoped. He throws away his trash and I keep him in the corner of my eye as I do some minor restocking. Then he's back at the counter. Either he's going to complain or he's going to order more food. Either way, I see my opportunity fall into my lap. Hi, is everything okay? Yes, I ordered extra stuff on my tacos and I didn't get the extra. Oh, I'm sorry about that, sir. We can remake those tacos for you if you got your receipt. I threw it away. That's a shame, but we really can't do anything without the receipt. The boss gets mad if we give out free food for no reason. He was obviously not happy that he has to go digging through the trash for said receipt. He returns and places it in front of me. I knowingly look over the receipt, knowing what I'm going to see, but I still wanted to waste a few minutes of this guy's day. I'm sorry, sir, but according to your receipt, you didn't ask for any extra. Yes, I did! I asked 3 times! And you yelled at me for how expensive that made your order, so we didn't charge you for them. Because they weren't on the order, the kitchen didn't put them on there. You seem satisfied with that. Then I want a free taco since you messed up my order. At this point, Rose stuck her head out of the kitchen and promptly told him, I'm not making you a free taco. You've yelled at my staff for simply doing their job, and you got what you actually paid for, so I'm gonna have to ask you to leave if you keep causing trouble. He made some stink about calling the boss, but we didn't hear anything that night, and I haven't gone in for my next shift. But I doubt anything will actually happen. I've never worked in the fast food industry because I've never wanted to see what happens behind the scenes, and I also believe that people are the worst when it comes to their food. I worked in retail for a while and those customers were pretty bad. So hearing about this OP's experience just reminds me of those bad days I had while working retail. At least this guy has a manager that stuck up for him. I can't say I ever really experienced that during my days of working a normal job. I'm a 35-year-old male who's a psychopath and I manage it well. Before you judge, in which I'm guessing it'll happen, Google psychopath. Because people often confuse psychopath and sociopath. They are not the same. I've never told anyone this, not family, not friends. Backstory, I didn't grow up conventional. Like I grew up really unconventional. Though nobody has a normal life, mine was different. When I tell people and they meet my family, their eyes widen, and I can see in their expression that they don't know how to feel. Generally, most people accept it. Those that don't, well, grew up normal. I was a pretty chill and calm kid. I didn't grow up in violence, but it was pretty normalized within my family, in the sense that I was taught not to take stuff from nobody. I took that pretty literally as a kid. If you have to fight, you do what you have to do to win. If that meant taking something to their leg, well, you gotta do it. But I was told never to be a bully or start fights. I was bullied for years all throughout middle and some of high school. I learned a lot from it. I was also taught that the world is a cruel place. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. I was very perspective and acknowledged this reality. I noticed I was different when I was around 7 years old. I didn't really like to talk a lot. I didn't really realize this until I was older. I didn't have a tolerance for others. Like, family would talk to me and I remember thinking to myself that they should shut up. I don't care. Aunts, uncles, cousins, etc. They would call me shy because I didn't talk. I just didn't have the patience for them. I would just play along, nod, fake laugh, so on. I didn't feel for friends, really. Even within my family, I was odd. I didn't even recall how I made friends. It didn't make sense to me. But I oddly fit in with the popular crowd. It didn't help that I was an attractive kid. I really hated all the attention. It would drive me insane. I would just conform because I saw that's what other kids wanted. So I would copy my friends to fit in the best I could. Honestly, I didn't care for them or anyone. It was hard for me to care about my family and friends as the years went on, to the point that I just didn't care if they kept in contact. Generally speaking, they all contact me, otherwise I wouldn't bother. I noticed I could use my lack of emotion to my advantage. I picked up on this in the 8th or 9th grade. I would manipulate others for my gain. I was really good at it. They still have no idea the things that I would do for my benefit. Yet I could easily hide I was lying to them. I would recreate emotions through many hours of practice. I would watch others, whether it was anger, crying, happiness, sadness, etc. I would just mimic their behavior. I would keep my bad thoughts in my head because I acknowledged that there was consequences. I would have these thoughts and I would never act them out. I was also fearless when I got bullied. Even though I knew I would get my butt kicked, I didn't flinch. My friends mistook this for having heart. I was already plotting my revenge on the bullies. I would do it in ways that it would ruin these kids' lives, putting stuff in their desks and lockers, weapons in their backpacks, and setting them up. I would then tell some random kid what I saw, and like clockwork, police would show up to the school. When I hit maybe my sophomore or junior year, I really noticed I had no regard for others. I would care less about people and their feelings. I was so intrigued I joined the psychology class because I wanted to see if I could figure out what was wrong with me. I learned so much about the human brain. I had textbooks full of knowledge that I could use. I would emulate different behaviors. It was amazing to me. I read the books like they were the gospel. I easily got an A+ in psychology. I was more advanced than the other kids in class, and they even gave me college credits, which eventually led me going to a college visit. They asked me if I wanted to take a personality exam. This was the one time I was actually completely honest. I answered all the questions the examiner gave me as honest as I could. When they looked at everything and pulled it all together, they asked me to speak with them. They told me that I needed to take it again. To me, I was a bit thrown off. So they gave me a similar exam and I answered truthfully. Again, they pulled me aside and asked me to speak with the professor about my results. He said that he had some concerns as I was showing signs of psychopathia. He said it wasn't something easily faked, that he has seen very few actually in all his years like myself. He said it wasn't 100% definitive, but that he is certain that I was one. I looked at him, not in confusion, but like, wow, that's what's wrong with me? He went on to basically interview me, asking me tons of questions. I was relieved to be able to be so honest. He said that you manage it very well and that I'm able to fit in, blah blah. He didn't think it was a concern, but he said that if I ever felt like I had a real problem, that I should seek help, whether it was him or someone else. Knowing this, I would read for hours on end about why I was the way I was, various books and journals. I never entered college because of it. I was pretty well off and not having any formal school or training. I'm successful enough that I can blend in. I BS my way through certain jobs and positions that I was able to manipulate my way for better pay. Within all of this time, I did have a plethora of relationships with girls. Dated popular girls, hooked up with older women, one of my friend's moms. I liked hooking up. I did end up getting married. I was oddly able to care about someone. I don't know, maybe it's because she was so different than myself. Though I do slip up from time to time for not having emotions for certain things. I do my best to make her happy. We have 4 children together who I'd absolutely kill for. It was like a switch flipped when I had them, that I actually cared for something, that I developed really real feelings for their mother, that if anyone hurt her, I would mess them up. I hide myself pretty well. People just think that I'm a quiet guy who keeps to himself. It has its pros and cons. I have to remind myself to tell my wife nice things, give her compliments, act in manners I see as pointless, but I do care and love her. I have no preference for politics. I never voted nor care to. I don't care if you are left or right. I don't care about most things people put stock into. I don't really care if you're pro-life or not. I don't care if you're BLM or pro-cop. It's all just nuance to me, honestly. Everyone is. I don't care about war. I don't care if they kill each other. Not my problem. It's been quite the life just blending in. This was one of the more interesting confessions that I've ever read because I 100% believe this OP. I mean, just look at shows like Dexter. He was pretty similar to what this OP described here. I'm curious if I were around this OP, what type of vibe I would get. I've gotten weird vibes from people in my life, and some of them actually turned out to be killers. It's pretty wild. You want a man to help? No problem. One will clock in soon. This happened 16 years ago. When I was about 20, I was a department manager in a big box hardware store. People said I acted 25, but I didn't even look 18. As a young female, I saw my fair amount of gender discrimination. But the worst always came from women. This is a story of one such woman. I managed the paint department. I had 3 associates who worked for me. They loved me as a boss because I brought them a department radio, took the shifts they didn't want. I would normally close on Friday, worked mid-Saturday so the 2 young guys could go have time to have fun on Friday nights, and the older gentlemen took early Saturday morning so they could sleep off their fun. In trade, I gave the older gentleman his ideal schedule. My team was awesome. One day I was in the department alone and a lady came up and asked me where she could find the 5-gallon oil-based primer. I let her know that my location didn't carry the 5-gallon size of that primer. She told me that we did and said that it was shelved right there while suggesting I was too stupid to remember. Her husband gave me an apologetic look. I let her know that the other location had what she was looking for and it was in fact in that exact location in that store. She let me know how stupid she thought I was for thinking that she could mix up stores. Then she began yelling and loudly insisting that I got a man out there to help her because she wanted someone competent and not some stupid little girl. Her husband actually tried to step in at that point, but I just smiled and let her know that a male paint associate would be clocking in any minute, and that I would be happy to direct him to her as soon as he was on the clock. I smiled and waited for Joe to clock in. Joe was great and I knew that he could handle this or I wouldn't have put him in this situation. But Joe was also new. He was learning things super quick, but he still relied on the rest of us for help. When I saw Joe walking up, I quickly said that there was a customer who needed help. I let Joe know that she was upset and asked him to do his best to answer her questions. Joe walked up to the lady and she said, "Finally, a man." She asked her question, explained where the product should be, and waited. Joe calmly let her know that he had never seen us carry a 5-gallon oil-based primer, but he said that he could check with the paint department manager. She was happy and loudly said that she was happy to be getting some real help. Joe walked up to me and started asking me about the 5-gallon oil-based primers. The lady quickly walked up and asked him what he was doing. He turned and said, "This is my manager. She runs this department." The husband laughed out loud, the woman stormed off, and I bought Joe lunch. Now, this is a great boss. I won't lie, some of my best bosses have been women, to be honest. Usually with my male bosses, if you guys weren't best bros, they usually had an issue with you because there was some ego involved. I love that she helped out her team and cared about their lives outside and even brought them lunch when they did something well. She's a winner in my book, and I love that Karen's husband laughed at her. My manager hates me, so I did something to get him demoted. This happened a few years back. I worked for a large grocery chain for about 12 years. In that time, I worked all holidays, came in early, stayed late, rarely called out sick, and came in on my days off. I was treated like complete garbage near the tail end of my time there, when we had gotten a new co-manager at the store. He acted like I wasn't a team player. He stalked my Facebook if I called out sick, trying to catch me in a lie, since he was used to me coming in and working when I was sick most of the time, which is completely terrible in and of itself. In those rare occasions that I would call out, he tried to require me to have a doctor's note to excuse that one day I would miss. While all this was happening, people would come in late with no call, be no call no shows, and be out sick for weeks with management knowing full well that these people would be on vacation. All this with zero disciplinary action. Cue malicious compliance number 1. The store started cracking down hard on OT. They were used to me coming in early and staying late to make sure all tasks were completed, with no complaints from management, since it meant that it freed up other people, themselves included, from having to do the work. My department, which was just me, was constantly praised by corporate for being one of the best looking and cared for departments that they had seen in the entire Northwest. I took pride in my job and what I did, but this soon became me working just my scheduled hours. It resulted in incorrect orders, a fall behind in keeping the shelves stocked, and a massive amount of overstock adding up in the back room. People that were clueless as to what we had to do in the back room were tasked with fulfilling my orders and ordering things that they thought we needed, but we did not. It quickly became a circus. They started letting me come in whenever I wanted and staying as long as necessary after about a month of fall behind. Cue malicious compliance number 2. I was really tired of being treated so poorly for the amount of time and effort I was putting into making my department perfect. I applied at a company that my friend had been trying to get me to come in for the last 5 years. Wasn't expecting to get the job as I had very little experience in that company, since most of my working career was at a grocery store. But I figured, hey, the worst that would happen is that I don't get it and I still have a full-time job with my current employer. Well, they absolutely loved me and quickly hired me on full-time. I put in a notice at the store that I had accepted a job elsewhere, but I was willing to stay there part-time to train whoever they hired to take my spot. 5 months go by and they hadn't even posted my position. They did nothing to fill my place. I ended up putting my 2 weeks notice in as I was so burnt out working 60 plus hours a week with 2 jobs with no scheduled days off in between the 2. I make sure that I was available to the grocery store for a huge holiday and my last day would be the day after that. This lovely co-manager, mentioned earlier, thought he was hurting me by not scheduling me for the last week of my notice, which this holiday fell in. Other management tried to backtrack this move and tried to get me to come in anyways, but alas, the schedule had been posted and as per union guidelines, they cannot change their schedule once posted without the consent from the employee. I shrugged at the co-manager and said, sorry, I wasn't on the schedule, so I made plans with my family since I hadn't had this holiday off in years. The rest of the management was furious at this guy for trying to pull this power move, which blew up in his face. I cashed out my banked vacation time before leaving, which only capped at about 3 weeks' pay, but still, it was my final screw you. Shortly after, I heard from some old friends and colleagues that this co-manager was demoted to a clerk in a small department. I work now for a far superior company who values their employees and compensates hard work. I had taken a huge pay cut when I took the new position, but within 3 years, I was making more than I had been making in 12 years at the grocery store. Biannual bonuses, paid vacation, a massive amount of paid sick and vacation time, and a considerable amount of less stress. Let this be a lesson to anyone who just listened to this story. Always put yourself first and don't be loyal to big companies that aren't loyal to you. I worked for a large retail company for 5 years and was never given a full-time position or good benefits. I left that company for a different one that I worked for 8 years until I realized that it was just as bad as the large retail company. At the start of the pandemic, I decided to save my money, pay off my debt, and try doing content creation full-time. I can say that I've never been happier with my life decision than making that move. Am I the jerk for being upset that my fiance didn't defend me to his female friend? Sorry in advance for how long this is. My fiance has female and male friends. It's human nature. I usually don't mind because I trust him. He introduced me to the majority of them, male and female, and we all get along great. But I don't know all of his friends, which is fine by me. Recently, however, one of his female friends, who I'm not too familiar with, started going through some domestic issues, not abusive, and started venting to her friend, my fiance, about it. Again, no problem. My fiance's phone got broken in an accident a week or so ago. Because we have trust in one another, I let him use my phone for whatever he needed, mainly to speak with the kids from his previous relationship. Once he signed into his account on my phone, I began to get notifications that were for him, which I would normally bypass. However, about 2 weeks ago, he got a cold and went to bed early. A little after midnight, my messenger video chat started ringing. I turned the volume down so I didn't wake him and really didn't pay any attention to who was calling because I was reading while I had some quiet time to do so. Plus, it was after midnight and I didn't want to talk to anyone. The messenger video chat rings for a second time on my phone and I check who it is and it's his female friend. I was confused by why she was calling so late, but I let it ring and messaged her that my fiance wasn't feeling well. and that she was speaking to his fiance and I didn't want to wake him. What was so important that she needed to say? She messages back quickly, just have him call me. My fiance and I had a falling out early in our relationship over another woman trying to come between us, and the trust wasn't easy to rebuild. So admittedly, I'm sensitive over other women calling at random hours with nothing to say to me and everything to say to him. So I ask in a way that I hope is neutral, and I say, it's not bad news, is it? She says, I don't have to explain myself to you, have him call me. As a person, she's right, she doesn't have to explain anything to me, but as the fiance of the man she's trying to wake up to talk to after midnight, I had questions. I tell her his phone is broken and his account was open on my phone, so her calls were coming to me until his new phone was delivered. She says, I don't know you and I don't want to talk to you. Congrats on your engagement, but I don't have to explain myself and I just want to talk to my friend. So at this point, I just said he'd call and that was it. I told my fiance when he was feeling better what had happened, and he told me that we were both being very petty and annoying to each other and that he wasn't going to choose sides. Okay, I wasn't thrilled about that, but I later thought it over and accepted that I did overreact, and I even said so to his friend, and that was that. A week later, we are out. The two of us are doing some shopping, and she calls him and says that she needs for him to drive her downtown during rush hour ASAP, but she will give him gas money for it. He says okay, and he says that I can come if I want to. And I just look at him with a funny face because where the hell else would I go? Hitchhike to a bus to go home so you can go save her at the last minute? He rushes to go pick her up, and I make sure that there's room in the back seat for her when she gets in. Immediately the air is super tense. It was impossible not to feel it. Trying to be the grown adult that I am, I speak first and say, hi, I'm blank. It's really nice to meet you. As an icebreaker. I have horrible social anxiety, so I don't even know what to say when people actually want to talk. I'm awkward no matter what. She says nothing. I'm naturally soft-spoken, so I think I wasn't loud enough and I say it again, louder. She says, yeah, whatever, I'm not in the mood for talking. Now correct me if I'm wrong, but I was raised to speak to people when I enter their space. Even if I don't have anything to say, still say hello at a minimum. She proceeds to say, I don't want to be disrespectful, but I just want to talk to my fiance's name. I don't know you and I don't want to talk to you, so I'm not going to talk at all since I just can't talk to him. Here's a part that I left out. I recently discovered that I'm pregnant. I haven't told anyone yet except for my fiance. So I've been sleeping a lot more. Arriving to her house, I was just in and out of sleep. This woke me up completely. My fiance says nothing. The tension was so thick I had to roll down a window to let some of it out. We all sat in silence until my fiance asked me to play some music in a quiet, I'm gonna get so yelled at voice. I put on the music and we sit in silence. As soon as she's out of the car, I went off. My fiance stays quiet for most of the explosion, except to agree that it was really awkward and she was rude for what she said. We get back to where she lives and she exits the car, only speaking to him and saying nothing else, and goes into the house. For that entire hour trip, she only gave him $10. So the entire ride home, I was livid. Blame the prego hormones, I don't care, I was a different color type of mad. Later that evening, my fiance and I had a long talk and came to a mutual agreement that he needed to check her for earlier so that it won't happen again. He doesn't. He claims that he forgot. So now it feels like there's no point in bringing it up because it happened the other day. It should have been addressed right then and there, at least the very same day, but no. So now she's gotten a clean getaway with disrespecting me, and I believed that he would handle it, so I said nothing to her. To top it all off, I got a message on my phone from her to him. His account was still open on my phone saying, I feel like I'm owed an apology because I was put in an uncomfortable situation and I just wanted to talk to you. I didn't want her there. Don't bring her with you next time. I don't want to talk to her. I don't want her in my business. Yada yada, because how dare I be in my own car with my own fiance because you're having a bad week, right? My fiance's only take on this was, neither is wrong or right. I don't want to choose sides on something so petty. I didn't like that. We argued all over again. Now he's distanced himself. He won't even hook up with me. Which early pregos makes me want to cry when he says not now, but no is no, so it's even harder now that I'm pregnant because emotions are so much more intense and he's going through those sympathy prego symptoms, so he's been sensitive as hell lately. I can't say anything to him without him getting upset or likewise. It's a nightmare right now and I just want to know, am I a jerk for all of this? Thanks for reading. I'm sorry it's so long. Hell nah! This dude should have checked his friend right away. You don't talk like that to your friend's significant others in a disrespectful way, even if you don't like them. Well, as long as they haven't disrespected you. But I'm not sure if this chick is that entitled or if maybe the fiance here is doing a little something something on the side. I don't want to assume because I have known some guys with no backbones like this OP describes her husband. All I know is that the OP is not a jerk for feeling the way she does. I was told quantity not quality by my boss, so I gave them exactly that. I worked at a law firm that handled an extremely high volume of cases. I'm talking thousands per month, and due to this specific field they were in, the work called for a ton of motion practice. We had to respond to motions on nearly every case, after which the case would settle and we would be paid relatively small amounts that added up. To answer all the motions, we had to use this boilerplate template, input a few specific via prompts, and send it off. This would take about 15 to 20 minutes. It was a profitable scheme, and to be fair, it worked for that specific field of law. This is highly irregular and would be nearly impossible to effectively mount a counter-argument in any other field of law, which typically requires research and fact-specific rebuttals to very specific challenges in the case. Fast forward and now the firm is taking on cases in a new field of law, nearly all 200 to 300,000 per case, or 100 times what a case in their original field would take. We needed to draft and file complaints on these cases. To achieve this, the partners insisted that our senior attorney would create a template. Our paralegal staff, making $10 an hour, would speak with the client and create the intake cover sheet for each case. And we would be the lucky middlemen who would have to input the cover sheet data into the template and generate a complaint for every single case in the new field that the firm was handling. In essence, they thought they could handle this new, complex, different field of law with much higher stakes in it the same way they were handling our normal cases. The intake staff had no clue what they were doing, and the boilerplate template was wildly insufficient to allege the particular facts, which varied so considerably between cases, also why intake had problems. The partners thought it would take me about 15 to 20 minutes to generate complaints with their method, but the reality was I actually had to review every file from scratch, figure out what was going on, input the data myself, make massive edits to the complaints, etc. It would take at least 1.5 hours to do a good job, and honestly, that's what I did, a good job. As you can imagine, something of a backlog ensued and the partners wanted to know what the issue was. I explained that due to the nature of the cases, they were requiring specific edits. I offered several recommendations on how we could improve our efficiency, but they didn't want to hear it. I explained that the cases were worth significantly more, and even spending 4 or 5 times longer on them than our other cases was still a huge win for them. They wanted paper out. Quantity over quality, I was told. Leave the decisions to them. Do what I'm instructed to do and play my part on the assembly line. Note that these partners did actually no legal work whatsoever on these cases. They once did a long time ago, but now they just watch cameras all day and complain if you're 5 minutes late. In a fit of frustration and rage, I maliciously complied. I actually stayed late a few nights and banged out 75 or so complaints that had backlogged. I sent them all to the senior attorney for final review, with no edits whatsoever, wrong data from our intake team, nonsensical legal arrangements, fact patterns that were completely untrue, just as I was told. After 3 workdays later, I got called in for a meeting about what the heck was going on in these complaints, and the senior attorney was about 1/3 of the way through what I had sent him, and not one of the complaints was suitable to be filed. I told him I was just doing my job on the assembly line and that the issue must be coming from somewhere else, but definitely not from me because I did exactly as instructed and mindlessly input the data and sent it along. They told me that it was unacceptable and if there was an issue, I should have brought it up to their attention, to which I replied that I tried and was not listened to. They refused to accept defeat and attempted to change data collection, change templates to no avail. It got hostile. No matter what they did, their system didn't work, and I continued to comply with their insistence that I do my job and my job only. It was unbelievable how stubborn these people were. I quit that job and moved on. I've been tracking some of the cases online and they're getting dismissed on motion. Quantity, not quality, eh? That's not how I practice law. It's crazy to think that something like proofreading would be thought of so carelessly in something like law practice. But it goes to show you that at the end of the day, corporate greed is always and will always be the end-all be-all. This is why I tell people to make sure that you are happy with the job you work at. Because at the end of the day, you're just a number to these big companies and they don't care about your ideas. Store owner Karen wants to speak with my manager. instantly regrets her decision. This happened about 13 years ago. I was a field service engineer for a national retail chain. Basically, I was the IT guy who drove around in a company vehicle servicing the computers, networks, and other stores. The way the company was organized, there were corporate employees and then there were retail employees. Being a corporate employee, I received corporate stock as a small part of my salary. And my starting pay was 3 times the rate of any store manager. Because I was always putting out fires, I often found myself in awkward positions of dealing with store managers who honestly thought that they were the store owners, and that I was just the hired help. This was truly ironic, as I actually did own a very small piece of the corporation where the average store manager did not. One day I got orders to replace a server in a store not too far from my house. I worked out of my house but kept parts in the truck and also the back room of another store nearby. So I show up to the store wherever the server needed to be replaced. It was my second stop of 3 scheduled for that day. I walk in the store wearing my very obvious corporate uniform and name tag with the logo. The store owner, retail manager, instantly demands to know what the hell I am doing in her store. I get this all the time, nothing new. I calmly explain that my boss wants me to upgrade one of the store's servers, hardware replacement. I even show her where it is that I will be working. I explain that it'll take about an hour and that the POS registers might go offline for about 5 minutes. She isn't happy, but she reluctantly allows me into the room where the server is and I start working. When I'm just about done, the POS registers go down as I am switching them to the new server, which is not fully hooked up yet. It was at this point when I realized I had forgotten to bring in a couple of cables that I need to finish hooking up the new server into the store network. So I run out of the truck to get the required cables. I'm gone about 2 minutes. When I get back, the store manager is sitting at a table in front of the server, and she's got food spread out all over the table. The server is under the table, and I tell the store manager that I need to finish hooking up the server. Gestures under the table. The store manager tells me I'll have to come back in an hour after her lunch break. I'm shocked in total silence. Then a cashier bursts into the room, panicking that the registers aren't working, and the checkout lines are starting to get backed up. I explain to the manager that I have to fix the server now or the registers will not work. The manager tells me I should have thought of that before I started working in her lunch break area. I calmly tell the store manager that she'll have to take her break later or find somewhere else to eat her lunch. She tells me that I'm rude and incompetent and demands to speak to my manager immediately. Okie dokie. I call up my manager using my corporate issue iPhone and quickly explain the situation, and then walk into the server room to hand the iPhone to my store manager. While she's on the phone with my manager, I head out to the front of the store to explain and apologize that the registers are going to be down for a few more minutes. I can't hear exactly what the store manager is telling my manager, but I can tell that it's a heated conversation, and I clearly hear the word fired mentioned a few times. It's clear that the store owner, retail manager, wants me to be fired for daring to try to interrupt her lunch break. Unfortunately for her, my district supervisor was about 5 or 6 levels above the retail district manager. So that store manager was complaining loudly about interrupting my work to the manager of her manager's 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 manager. A few minutes later, the store manager walks out of the room awkwardly balancing bits and pieces of her lunch spread. I immediately go back to work getting the new server up and running and rebooting the POS registers so that they will sync on the new server and cashiers can get back to work. Everyone is happy now except the store owner because her lunch break was ruined. The main part of my task is now done, but it does take me about 15 minutes to clean up my mess and reorganize my truck to get ready for the next stop, which will be at about an hour drive away from my current location. As I'm doing this, I see the retail district manager, I've met her before, going into the store. She walks back out of the store with the former store manager who is carrying a box of her personal items. Bruh. This story was fantastic. I love when entitled people get owned by people that are in higher positions of power than they are. Because most of the time, those people that put them in their place are usually chill, nice people. So it's always great to hear about someone getting owned by kindness. You can't talk to paying customers like that. Fine, consider your meal free, now get the hell out of here. This is not the story I wish it was based on the title. and for that I apologize. Running the drive-thru for fast food has its ups and downs. The ups are when we manage to find the humor in the stupidity, weirdness, quirkiness of others, and the downs are when we're treated like absolute garbage. I start off by saying a quote that my manager said. Dave Thompson, the founder of Wimpy's. Once a customer insults an employee of mine, they're no longer a customer. If this was an actual quote, I could truly say that this is the MC. But it lies truly in the factor that the customer I'm about to write about didn't pay for her food. I wouldn't let her. So Mumbles McGee comes in hot on the drive-thru, sputtering her seriously unintelligible garbage to the tune of, I need a burger with pickles and onions on mustard, not ketchup, and mustard and no mayo and chocolate chunk. This is exactly how she sounded. Except chunk really sounded like chunk the way she pronounced it. I tried to explain to her as she rattled this off that first, I need her to slow down, and second, I needed to know what burger. We have a 2-ounce and a 4-ounce burger. Third, it works better when customers say what they do want or what they don't want as a very distant second, but still doable. I once had a customer list 10 things they didn't want. It was probably Julia Stiles, a la 10 toppings I hate about you, R.I.P. Heath Ledger. However, listing the things that you want combined with the things you don't, then unnecessarily repeating the unimportant information is just confusing. I decided to ask her, okay, do you want a Dave single or a junior hamburger? And what toppings do you want? Mumbles continues, oh my god, I want a burger with... I can't even say what she just said, and a chocolate chunk. I managed to get the toppings she wanted by some miracle, then I asked about the chunk. To be clear, it sounded like chocolate chunk, which is a cookie we have. We also have Frotties, which is a shake, I guess. All this time, my shift supervisor is hovering around, and my fellow employees are getting antsy knowing stuff is about to go down. Then it does. Are you stupid? Oh my god, a shrimp me shrimp. I swear she got less intelligible with each passing second. I almost called an ambulance, but I was too angry about being called stupid. I said, ma'am, I am doing what I can with what you're giving me. Please pull forward. Screech! I think it's hilarious how people call others stupid and are literally the dumbest and stupidest looking people I've ever seen. She didn't disappoint. Ratty hair, rosacea, late 50s, dumb look on her face that she's trying to look angry, but I ain't buying it. Look too forced. Frank Gallagher wouldn't give her the time of day. By the time I decided I'm going to tell her off, she pulls up and starts spitting at me while saying, "Where's the manager?" I interrupt her by quoting my other manager. I remember they said, "Ma'am, you can't go insulting our employees because we don't understand you. You need to shut up." My shift supervisor chimes in, "OP, you can't be talking to paying customers like that." Enter malicious compliance. I since shut the window on her, as she is still continuing to yell to the open air. While my shift supervisor knows that I'm mad, he decides to back down on this as I tell him how little I care about this terrible paying job, and I'll have 2 more like these by the time I get home, and that management needs to care for us. We just got done with an ordeal where a customer called one of our employees the R word, and the management paid lip service to us but still apologized to the customer. What a two-faced twat burger. I was so mad that I was willing to pay for her food so I could tell her off. That's what I did. I handed out her food, wouldn't let Samantha collect on it. "Here, we don't want your greasy, dumb money. Get the hell out of here and don't come back without an apology letter." Pre-date, the shift supervisor knew exactly what this woman was ordering because she's done this BS before to other employees, evidently. I can't believe that they let her keep coming back. I'm taking a stand on this one, and I never paid for her food. I just let the terrible supervisor figure that out. She never paid, but I'll be damned if I'm actually going to pay for her. By the way, chocolate chunk means chocolate frosty. Who knew? There is an edit here. A little background information on why, how we do what we do. I can tell you that answering, "Welcome to Wendy's, what can I get started for you?" 590 times gets tiring. By the 300th time, I'm worn out, but still intelligible. I know how our POS system works, and I know that if you start saying something like, "Yeah, I need 3 4s, 4 4s, a number 6 combo, etc., I will stop you dead in your tracks, because I need to enter the size of the combos. I need to enter the drinks and make them as you say them, and thirdly, I need to know which 4 junior bacon, crispy chicken, 3 McCheeses. If I don't enter the specific order, it throws off the kitchen. It just screws up the orders. It slows down our time, your experience, your freshness of food. Most people have figured out how to order it effectively. Like, Yeah, I need 3 crispy chicken 4 for 4s, all Sprites and BBQ sauce for the nuggets. I'm sorry, scratch that, 2 Sprites and a Sunburst melon lemonade. Love that guy. We've tried the listening thing, and you ordering your regular burger with no vegetables just isn't on the menu. I could sit there and let you say everything you want to say, but guaranteed I'm going to just make you repeat most of it, if not all of it again, because of the order in which we've been trained to enter the combos, meals, drinks, nuggets, sauce, etc. And it's also about the sound system. Ours is pretty good, but the speakers project our voice rather thinly. Man, I've always went by the rule of you don't mess with people that make your food, and I will continue to live by that statement until the day I die. Customer accuses me of being a con artist and incompetent because he was $50 short. So this happened today, and it was just so wild and funny, I have to share it. So for those of you who may not have seen the previous post, I work as a delivery driver for a building supply store. I've never had any issues with those I deliver to, because if something is wrong with their order, I just point out that I was just given the papers of what to deliver and where to go. Or I admit that I forgot something. They understand that and they direct their frustration at the staff who made the order wrong. Or if I forgot, they appreciate the effort of me arranging to get their missing items. Today was the first extremely irate customer I had to deal with. A guy ordered close to $3,000 worth of material. They were paying cash when I arrived. So our rule is that you get the cash first, then you give the materials. I get there and this guy looked rough. Either like he's been on something for years in his life or he still was. I go through the routine, asking him where he wants the stuff to be placed, etc. Then I ask him for the money. He starts counting off the bills, handing them to me faster than I can verify the amount. At one point, I noticed that he claimed that he handed me $400. I saw it was really $350, and I pointed that out, and he claimed that it was all there. When I count the last amount, I noticed $50 was missing. Thinking maybe I miscounted to be safe, I recounted 3 times. Each time came up $50 short. Important to note, in order to safely count, I sat the money on a cooler which was not directly in sight of the customer, but he was watching the whole time. So I tell the customer who has a friend there that there's $50 missing. He claims that there shouldn't be because he had counted it beforehand. I told him that unfortunately I counted it 3 times and each time it was short. He starts getting angry, saying that it was correct and that he counted it all beforehand. I hand him the money, say that he can verify, so he counts and sure enough it comes up short. He starts saying that he doesn't understand, he counted everything. Then said, I don't know what kind of con job you're trying to pull. I told him I wasn't, just that $50 are short, and I can't leave any materials unless I get the full amount. He gets madder and madder by the second. He points to his friend and says that he was there when he counted, which the friend replies, I only caught glimpses. And he suddenly says to me, so now you have 2 witnesses against me. I told him everyone is human, we all make mistakes, so maybe he miscounted. I pointed out how I noticed $50 missing when he handed me the $400. He didn't like that. His voice is getting higher and higher and accusing me of taking the money. He starts to swear, saying I don't know how to count, or I pocketed the money, just every kind of blame he could think of where it was my fault. Most of them involving me stealing from him or conning him. My voice started to raise too. I tell him if he's just going to accuse me and say all this stuff, I'll take the order back and he won't get anything. He keeps yelling, so with the money still on the cooler where we counted it, I told him all your money is there, you aren't getting your order. Send someone who has bleeping brains who knows how to count and is competent. I'm going to call your boss and get you fired. At this point I had it, and I told him to go ahead and call my boss. This dude's attitude was terrible. So he yelled, I have a bleeping great attitude. I replied, you're throwing a tantrum like a 5-year-old. So I got in my vehicle and drove off. As soon as I'm back, I informed the staff what happened. At that point, that's when the customer phones. While the worker is dealing with him, since my bosses weren't at the store, I called them and make them aware of the situation. They assured me that everything was fine, that I did the right thing. I wasn't worried about that. I just wanted them to be aware of the situation. So the worker got off the phone saying that they're sending one of the other drivers back so I wouldn't have to deal with it. I warned the driver that the customer was short on money, so be careful. The worker dealing with the call told me what he said. He was making it look like he was the victim, saying that I was accusing him, that I wouldn't let him recount, and I was the first one to start yelling. My coworker brought on several points that I mentioned about what he said, and he said, yeah, I was a little rude, I shouldn't have said that, but this just ruined my day. Tell the driver I'm sorry, I was just angry because I was being accused of not having all the money. My coworker pointed out that that kind of behavior is not tolerated towards drivers, and I was following the rules for not giving an order when I haven't received full payment. They told the customer that I am extremely competent and that I know how to do my job, and that if they say it's short, they believe me. The worker tried to keep control of things and said, I'm just trying to meet you in the middle. We are all human, we all make mistakes. Maybe my driver miscounted, maybe you did, maybe a bill fell on the floor. All the while, he was trying to make it seem like he was wronged. So my coworker comes back with the full amount and the order gone. He explained to me how $50 was still missing and that the customer had to go into his wallet for the missing amount. Then the customer went on for 10 minutes about how I was rude, how he doesn't understand why anyone would risk their job stealing $50 from a customer, and how he never wants to see me delivering to this place again. My coworker just told him, I'm just here to drop things off and get the money, man. I don't know what happened, what was said, anything like that. I don't know if he said it to the customer or if it was under his breath, but he said, and as for him not coming back to your place again, the feeling's mutual. Apparently the customer said that he likes everyone at the store except me, and he expects them to make things right. So if I hear any more, I'll definitely do an update post. If you have never worked in customer service before, the one thing I will tell you is the biggest lie about customer service is the idea that the customer is always right. I'm not sure who invented that saying, but it must have been invented during an era where people had a lot of respect for each other, because nowadays, the customers that complain are mostly wrong. Karen demands Harry Potter book, gets rejected and sent to the back of the line. This story is partly an interaction and partly overheard. I hope that makes sense. Once more, we're back at the department store. This time, I was in the book section. The day was the first day after the release of the latest Harry Potter book. I think it was Order of the Phoenix if I remember correctly. Now a quick explanation. We had opened pre-orders for this book for a while before it came out, and we were only getting enough books to fill those pre-orders. We had told any customer who had inquired about the book that we were only taking pre-orders, and no, we didn't know when we would have a stock just to put on the shelves. So if you wanted it, order it now. Now back to the day. As soon as we opened, people made a beeline for our department and very quickly made a long queue. The pre-order book was ready to one side and we were trying to get through the people in the line as quickly as possible. All they had to do was give us a name and hand over their pre-order receipt we had given them when they ordered. There of course were people who had lost it or who had forgotten their receipt, but we sorted these out as quickly as possible by using the name on the order. Then this lady comes swanning into the department. The reason I remember this lady so clearly is because you could smell her perfume before her. It was strong and floral, and my body's first reaction was to sneeze. Anyway, she sees the queue, eyes it, and then comes walking towards the register counter and tries to squeeze into the line. A man in the queue eyes her with disgust, points over his shoulder and says in a firm voice, "Lady, the back of the line is that way." A few people snicker. The lady shoots him a daggering glare and tries to get into the line again. And once more she is told, "The back of the line is that way." I'm not joking about the emphasis on those 3 words. She huffed, started to walk down the line and kept attempting to get into the queue, but no one would let her in. She would get glares from everyone in the line, and sure enough, she had to join the queue at the end. I thought it was over at that point, but since I'm writing this on Reddit, you know that's not where it ended. When she eventually reached the counter, she huffs out, "The queue was far too long and went so slowly." I smiled at her. "I'm sorry, madam. The new Harry Potter book came out last night and many people are coming today to get their books. We've been working hard to get through everyone as quick as possible. So how can I help you today?" "I know the new Harry Potter book came out today. That's why I'm here." She said this like I was somehow extremely stupid. "Oh, do you have your pre-order receipt?" I asked, trying to stay cheerful while already disliking this lady. No," is her response. "Oh, well, that's okay. If you tell me the name you used to pre-order it, then we'll be able to get your book that way." I tell her, grabbing the order book. "What are you talking about? I just want a book. I see you have a whole pile right back there." She says to me, pointing at a box that we had behind the counter holding the pre-order books. Instantly, my heart drops. I think, oh no, this is not gonna be good. "I'm sorry, madam, but these are all pre-orders. I can't give them to anyone but those who ordered them." "But I need that book, now. Give me one," she demands while holding her hand out to me and moving her fingers in a give me motion. "Madam, I just explained that those are pre-orders." "You must have others," she insists. I shake my head at her. "I'm sorry, madam, we don't. We only have pre-orders." "You don't have more books? What kind of book department is this? How can you not have enough for all your customers?" the lady asks in an unimpressed, sarcastic voice. I did my best to stay calm and move into my usual way of dealing with this kind of customer. Be so polite and helpful that they end up giving up and can't complain to anyone about me. Because they can't really complain about someone trying to be overly helpful and polite. Madam, this is the latest Harry Potter book. There is a shortage all over the place. We were only able to get enough for our pre-orders and have no spares. You can try other bookstores in town, they might have some, but I can't say for certain. No, I already went there and they sent me here. I want the book, she says, stomping her foot like a toddler. I'm sorry, madam, but as I told you, we don't have any to spare. I can order you one now if you'd like. I offer trying to be helpful to get a future sale and to get rid of this lady. No, I want one now, she demands, stomping her foot again. But we don't have any you can have. I can order you one and it'll take about a week. A week? A week? She screeched like a deranged seagull. Yes, madam, a week. As I previously said, there's a shortage. I'm afraid that we can only get these books on pre-order, and I'm afraid that we don't know when we will have more for the general sale. I tell her, trying to keep a hold of my sanity. At this point, there are a lot of people muttering in the queue about her. This, I figured, was because they wanted their books, and as the counter only had 2 tills, and 2 servers, of which I was one, she is really slowing things down for all of them. A shortage? I don't believe that. You have a whole box right there, she says, pointing her finger at the box victoriously. Madam, those books are for pre-orders only. I tell her once more, starting to feel like a broken record. I can feel the moment the light bulb went off in her head as she has a bright idea. I swallow a groan and think to myself, oh no. Sure enough, I was right to think as she says, well, just give me one and tell someone else that you didn't get enough. My brain skipped. In a record scratch moment, while I internally go, what? My brain rebooted and somehow managed to say, ma'am, I can't do that. Yes, you can. I am here and they are not, she insists. No, madam, I cannot do that. You can order one now yourself and come back in a week, or you can just leave and try elsewhere. I'm afraid I cannot help you any further than I have, I say as politely as possible. She opened and closed her mouth a few times as she searched for something to say to get me to give her a book. After a few moments, the lady huffed in frustration and then stalked off into the store, never to be seen again. I was never big into Harry Potter, so I have never had to deal with book people, but I have had to deal with lines at conventions like San Diego Comic-Con. And I'll tell you, man, people will judo chop you in places like that. So this entitled Karen got off pretty easy. Nerds nowadays don't play. My boss's wife slapped me, so I sued him and got 3 months of vacation. This happened in Germany, so the laws are different to other countries, especially to the USA. I was working for a family-owned business, about 40 employees, a couple years ago. My time there wasn't the best because I had huge problems with my boss's younger brother. He was on early pension and was officially just working on a small part-time contract, while in reality working full-time with getting most of his salary out of pocket. When I was hired, the position was meant for him, so he ended up working half the hours he worked before and having a huge pay cut because of me. This obviously made him upset, as you can imagine. He talked bad about me behind my back all the time and would try to get me fired. Dealing with him was a pain in the butt, but I didn't have to deal with him often. My coworkers were nice and the pay was good, so I didn't care about finding another job despite my relationship with my boss and his family getting worse over time. My boss even came with me to 2 deliveries to customers because his brother probably told him I was wasting time during the deliveries. One day I had to do a delivery with my boss's wife's car because the company car I normally use was at the inspection on that day and the timing couldn't have been worse. I scratched the fender of her car on a wall when I tried to get out of a parking spot. The scratches were barely noticeable, but I immediately reported this to one of my coworkers so no one could say that I was trying to sweep this under the rug. I did the delivery, and when I came back, my boss's wife was already waiting for me. She went completely crazy. She screamed at me for ruining her car, without inspecting the damage before, and she said that she will take the money from the repairs from my paycheck. I told her that I won't pay for anything because the insurance will pay for it anyways, and that's what led to her snapping, and she slapped me in the face. I immediately turned around, grabbed my stuff, clocked out, and went to the doctor to get a sick note because of mental stress, which I threw into the company's mailbox that evening. 2 days later, I got a termination letter in the mail and had to laugh while reading just the first sentence. We are terminating your work contract immediately, or if this isn't applicable within legal 30 days. To people who are not familiar with German work laws, it's illegal to terminate a contract immediately and within the legal period of time in the same termination letter. You can do one or the other, but not both at the same time. So I went to the government office to apply for unemployment and hired a lawyer to sue my boss for illegal termination. Over 2.5 months went by until I got the court date, and my boss was really upset when the judge explained to him that the termination was illegal and that he had to pay me for the last 2.5 months. But the illegal termination wasn't the only mistake he made. The judge gave him 2 options. I can accept an immediate termination on that day and leave without compensation, or I can have a 2-month salary compensation, but I would have to go work another month for the company. My boss laughed and said that I'm too scared to go back to work, and that makes him happy that I will leave court unemployed. He didn't look that happy anymore when I asked him, why should I be scared? Do you want to beat me like your wife did? So I took option B and went to work the next morning. My boss's brother already waited for me to hand me the termination letter and made comments about how difficult the next 30 days would be for me. I checked the termination letter, and after I've seen that everything was right, I just said that I'm not feeling well, turned around, went to the doctor to get another 30-day sick note because of burnout. So at the end of it all, I had a 3.5 months vacation with full pay, 2 months salary compensation, and my boss had to pay for my lawyer too because he lost at court. I could have sued my boss's wife for the slap too, but that would have been too much stress for maybe a couple €100. Man, the wife would have been the first person that I went after if I was suing anybody. You don't put your hands on other people unless they did it to you first. I'm glad this OP outsmarted their terrible boss and screwed him out of 3.5 months worth of pay. Good for you, OP. I have to choose my own topic to speak at a conference that I don't really want to go to? No problem. This is quite an old story, and I'm going to keep it deliberately vague. When I was still fairly new to the job, I was asked to speak at a conference. This conference was actually a promotional event organized by a manufacturer of a chemical used in our industry. I was employed by a government department to be an independent advisor, not beholden to any particular manufacturer or supplier. I felt that speaking at an event was a major conflict of interest, as it would appear that I was open to promoting this particular chemical. However, senior people at my organization were not so ethical. The department was a boys' club, and the manufacturer of the chemical was one of the boys, and told me that I had to accept the invitation. Even worse, the initial agenda looked like this: John, topic A; Tom, topic B; Henry, topic C; someone from Department X, topic to be announced. The role of someone from Department X fell on me by default because the other candidates were not available. I didn't even have an actual place or role on the agenda. I was just an extra filler spot. I asked the conference organizer what they wanted me to speak about. How about topic A? They said. I told them that that was being covered by John already. A similar discussion we had was about topic B and C, and eventually the conference organizer said, well, why don't you just call the other speakers and see what they are talking about and see where you fit in? Hang on a minute. It's not my role to do all the legwork to find a topic. That's your role as an organizer. My role as a speaker is to take the topic you give me, do my research, write my talk, and deliver it. And quite frankly, if the organizers couldn't think of a topic, did I really need to be a presenter at all? I thought, fine, if you want me to choose my own topic, then I'm going to present another point of view. There had been some recent research into other chemicals and the results were promising, so I thought I'd talk about that in my research. And to be quite honest, I simply couldn't think of another topic, as I felt every base had been covered by people much more experienced than me. So I informed the conference organizers that I would choose my topic and I would speak about recent works on these other products. I then got a hold of the results of the research and wrote what I thought would be a pretty good speech. Well, a few days later, the conference organizers rang me up and said that they didn't need me after all. No apology for wasting my time was given. This guy is way more respectable than I am. If my job was forcing me to speak in front of people and didn't have a topic or speech prepared, you better believe that I'm rolling up to that conference with a PowerPoint presentation talking about how waifus make a better lifeu. I humiliated my supervisor. This happened several years ago, but I thought I would post about it. I, 55 female, had been working for the same place for over 20 years. Here comes a new supervisor who we'll call H-Boss. My previous temp supervisor hated me because, well, he just hated women, period. So when H-Boss took over, he gave him an earful about me. A little background on me: I do my job very well, but I don't take anything from no one, which resulted me and the temporary supervisor to bump heads. So when the new supervisor took over, I was the problem child. H-Boss hated me from day one. No matter what, he hated me. One day at work, I was feeling horrible and I told H-Boss that I need to leave to go to the hospital. If looks could kill, I would have dropped dead right in front of him. He didn't want me to leave. I left anyways, and thank God I did because I was truly sick. I had emergency surgery that night and was out of work for 2 months. While I was out of work, this man harassed me every week to see when I was coming back. He was lucky that I was on heavy meds at the time because I didn't feed into his BS. 2 months later, I'm back at work and realized that none of my work has been done by my backup person. I had over 509 reports that needed to go on the website. I asked him what happened and he told me don't worry about it. I thought this was weird because these reports needed to go up within 60-day period and it was well past 60 days. A few days later, I asked him again, and he said don't post it because he had other people doing my job. I said okay. I then sent him an email confirming he didn't want me to post it. He came back saying, yes, I don't want you to touch it. I said okay and saved my email. Here's the malicious compliance part. A few months later, people started inquiring about the reports and why the new ones weren't posted. It got to Big Boss and they questioned the both of us. He didn't know that they had already questioned me about it and he started yelling at me about not doing my job. I sat there at my desk just smiling when he went in about trying to get me fired. I simply said, oh, are you talking about these reports that you told me not to post? He said that he had never said that. I turned to my computer and printed out an email stating to not touch the reports. The look on his face was priceless. I then told him that I sent copies of this email to upper management and that they know it wasn't my fault. By this time, his supervisor was already yelling for him to get in his office. I smiled and said good luck with that. He ended up leaving a few months later. I got the biggest satisfaction in knowing I got him in trouble and I kept my job.
Yeah, baby, this is what I'm talking about.
Always confirm in an email when your management tells you to do something or not do something. This will save your life in the long run, just like it did with this OP. I almost had something similar happen to me at my job with a supervisor that hated me, but that's a story for another time. Nasty Feet Karen feels like we are scamming her, so we tell her that we will keep her car. For context, I work at a high-volume Cadillac dealership that also sells and services Chevrolet. Karen comes into our dealership 10 minutes late for her 4 p.m. oil change and tosses her keys to an advisor while gabbing on her phone loudly. It was a personal call and the word affair was mentioned. That's all I got. Cue to 5 minutes later when I look out of my office, which looks into the customer lounge. Karen has seated herself in a chair, but also pulled up another leather chair from the other side of the lounge so she could take off her socks and shoes and put her nasty feet on the other chair. So she's all spread out while gabbing on her phone. She then proceeds to start complaining that she was waiting too long, it had been 15 minutes, and then proceeds to walk around our entire dealership barefoot complaining about the lack of service and the excruciating wait time, yada yada yada. At about 4:45, the advisor comes to her and says that her car is all done, but during her courtesy inspection, the tech recommended new shocks, brakes all around, and since she was close to 100,000 miles, routine maintenance items. Karen is barely paying attention as she's focused on the outrageous and disgustingly high cost of her oil change. It was under $50 USD. But when the advisor told her what she needed to be done to make her car road safe, which would be about $1,100, she lost it. She accuses him of trying to take advantage of her because she's an older woman and that we are trying to scam her thinking she didn't know anything about vehicles. Well, Karen, you drive a 99 Buick LeSueur with almost 100,000 miles. The brakes are rusted through and you have metal on metal brake pads and rotors. So basically you have no brakes. My tech didn't even want to let you go because they technically aren't street legal in our state at that point. Your shocks are gone, as in not just leaking, but one was hanging on by a hope and a prayer, and the other was so rusted my tech didn't even know how she lost it. Your front driver's side frame is rusted out, so you packed it with 2x4 and foaming spray. God, I wish I would have had a picture of that. She didn't even get to hear about her totally bald tires. It was safe to say that this woman has never done anything other than oil change on her car, period. She screamed and cussed, demanded the owner. She got the GM and service manager. My poor cashier, who was also being personally attacked at this point, just shut her window and refused to help her anymore. I mean, Karen did call her a pathetic C word, so I don't blame her. GM and SM are attempting to explain everything to her, but she is refusing to listen. Finally, my SM calls me over. I'm the office manager of sales, service, and warranties, to try to get a female to try to calm her down, as she now said she felt threatened. While I hadn't been involved yet, I had seen her behavior and was almost ready to step out anyway. Ma'am, you felt comfortable enough to take off your socks and shoes to rest on our leather chairs. You also felt comfortable enough to walk around our sales floor and service lounge barefoot. If now you are uncomfortable, I will take care of your oil change today. You have your inspection report with our technician's recommendations as well as our quote. Now, before I can release your car to you, however, I do need you to sign this waiver that you are taking your car against our advisement, as we have deemed it unsafe for the road. We consider it a risk to your safety as well as others. In order to protect us from bad customer decisions, we require this, and state law allows us to hold your vehicle if we deem it unsafe. Per state law, if you sign this, we cannot hold your vehicle. She signed the paperwork and called me a bunch of terrible names. I was condescending to her. Yeah, I totally was. And she couldn't believe that she was being treated that way. And of course, the famous, "I'm never coming back." Then she claimed that she knows the owner. Problem is, the owner's name isn't Peter, neither is his son or any of the grandsons. Looking into her service history here, she's only ever been here once 3 years ago for a wiper blade replacement. Bro, it always blows my mind how people think it's okay to just straight up put their nasty feet all over everything. I've seen people do this in theaters before, but the worst place is when people do this on airplanes. Like, bro, who raised y'all? You just know that these are also the same type of people that think getting water splashed on them counts as being clean. Karens be gross and smelly out here, y'all. My boss has a meltdown and says my only job is to clean. My boss is generally a nice and caring individual. She has always seemed to have all of our best interests in mind, and we have always felt as though we could go to her for anything. That is, until recently. She has been so cranky and accusatory to everyone, but especially those she does not currently favor. Yes, my boss apparently picks favorites. This was news to me after years of working for her. I never knew or noticed before these past couple of months, but now I see her in a whole new light. She won't punish her favorite even if they mess up multiple times in major ways, but will punish anyone if they step even slightly out of line. It's BS to say the least, and we are all done with it. The other day, I was in the back helping one of my coworkers with something and was back there for a little while. We had 2 other people up front manning the front desk, so it should be fine. It was a Saturday and we were busy, but we were not that busy. We rarely need all 3 of us up front anyways. My manager scheduled me for a Saturday shift. She specifically told me that part of my job was to go to the back and help that one coworker if she needed it. Well, she needed it. So I went back to help. One of my other coworkers must have mentioned that I was back there to my boss, because a few minutes later, my boss comes back and starts berating me for being back there. She says that she's heard that I've spent 3+ hours back here every Saturday helping my coworker. This is not even close. I spend maybe half an hour with her, and if I need to spend longer, I will go up front to see if anybody needs help with anything. She says my coworker has a dedicated helper and that I need to spend my time cleaning because that's all I'm here for. For reference, my coworker's dedicated helper is useless. They are worse than having no help at all. So, as someone who values my coworker, I go back and assist them whenever they need it because I know that their helper won't. This, coupled with the fact that the manager told me to do this and the exaggeration of how much time I spend in the back, angered me and my coworker that I was helping. Then my boss just had to make it worse. I told her privately in a note everything that the helper wasn't doing. I told her how frustrated we all were and how I was just trying to help my coworker like I was supposed to do. I told her in excruciating detail how much my coworker needed a better helper and how I was going to continue helping her until my boss found one. My boss lost it. She got so angry and yelled at me. It's the first time in 5 years that she has ever gotten upset at me. She accused me of being a coward and that I needed to grow up. She said basically I told her to screw you with my letter, which was not my intent at all. She wouldn't listen to anyone who tried to back me up or confirm what I said. She attacked everyone, enough to make my poor coworker run out of the room in tears and take a personal day because of how upset she was at the way my boss was treating us. By treating me and multiple other coworkers this way more than once, my boss has now created an environment of solidarity between her employees to not do anything extra for the business. We all used to go above and beyond for her, but not anymore. Things are not getting done now and my boss can't figure out why. She snaps at us about it and we try to tell her but she won't listen, so we don't try to change it. I'm only there to clean on Saturdays, boss? Okay, my coworkers will be just fine without me apparently. I used to stay late, update the website, I was the only one that did this, do extra paperwork, etc., but not anymore. I come in, I clean for the entire second half of my shift, and I leave. Nothing more, nothing less. There is an update to this story. A few weeks ago, I made a post about my boss having what I could only describe as a meltdown. She had been berating us, fairly punishing us, and favoring employees that deserved to be fired. Since making that post, there has only been, as far as I'm aware, one instance of her making false accusatory statements to one of my coworkers. Something about my coworker verbally berating our manager and spreading gossip. My coworker, to their credit, called my boss out for her bold-faced lies, and my boss seemed to calm down a bit. The issue, though, is that my boss is super paranoid about everything. This is new behavior for her, as she is usually a very level-headed, rational person. She's highly educated with a doctorate degree, she has a memory as sharp as a tack, and she has always been extremely calm even in the most serious situations. As I said in the last post in the comments, she is very ill. She has a plethora of illnesses. I'm not sure what they are, but I know that they're serious, and it requires a lot of medication and steroids. We believe she has either recently changed her meds or upped the dosage, which is causing her paranoia and bouts of anger. Corticosteroids can cause the following: problems with mood swings, memories, behavior, and other psychological effects, such as confusion or delirium, according to the Mayo Clinic. This would definitely explain why she is acting this way. She is not herself on these medications and probably doesn't even realize it. It helps me a lot to know that her behavior is just a side effect of the harsh yet necessary meds she is on. But it is still hurtful that she is treating us like that regardless. Another update, my coworker dedicated helper finally got fired. She was deemed unfit for the job and got let go a couple weeks back. It took way too long for them to do that, but better late than never, I guess. They have yet to find a replacement for her, so I've been put in her place temporarily. Another one of my coworkers quit last week without notice. She was fed up with the environment and favoritism, so after months of deciding whether she should or not, she finally just walked. I'm honestly very proud of her for leaving. As for me, I had a working interview a week or so ago, but I didn't get a call back, which I'm fine with. I wasn't thrilled about that place anyways, but I'm still applying for anything and everything I can. I have about 40 job applications that I've submitted since the original blow-up. We are down to 3 people and management can't seem to fill the spots. Gee, I wonder why. Hope that was a good update for you guys. I'll keep you posted if anything else exciting happens. Bro, I have to say I've worked with some crazy managers before and they can be the reason that you quit. Actually, one of them was the reason that I quit. I used to work at a call center, which was a job I totally hated. Anybody that works at a call center can probably relate. I did have this amazing female manager, but she used to work at a bank and eventually got called back to work at some other bank, so she left us. She was replaced with some 40-year-old guy who thought he was still in a fraternity, and oh my god was he terrible. He was always checking out the women in the call center, and he was always kind of talking down to the men. Me and him did not like each other to the point where he eventually said, "I can't wait to give this performance review," which I looked at him and I was like, "Whose is it?" And he was like, "Yours." I just rolled my eyes, got back to my calls, and at the end of the day told him, "Hey, I'm putting in my 2 weeks." He had this dumb look of shock on his face. I didn't even bother doing my 2 weeks. I went in the next morning and said "Hey, today's my last day," and dipped. So let this be a lesson to you. If you're running your own business, make sure your management's awesome or you're gonna lose a lot of employees. Am I the jerk? I want my boyfriend to block one of his friends because they hooked up before. He made me do the same. So to elaborate, I've been on and off with my boyfriend for more than 4 years, and and we have been doing long distance all 4 years. We were not together through April to August last year, and he hooked up with 4 girls during this time. When we reconnected in August, we asked each other if the other person had done anything intimate with anyone else. When I asked him, he said, "No, I didn't do anything. I didn't even want to talk to anyone. I knew if I were to have done anything with anyone else, that it meant we were never going to get back together." He asked me if I had done anything, and I told him that I had briefly spoken to 2 boys on the internet, but that nothing came out of it. I also told him that I got on Tinder with a friend for giggles just to see what guys were like on the app, and to make fun of a few things. My boyfriend, although we were not dating again at this time, got furious that I was on the app and didn't believe me when I said that I had not done anything with any of these guys. We have struggles with trust issues for quite some time in previous years. I began to feel extremely guilty for having downloaded the app and talking to 2 guys even though we literally did absolutely nothing other than talk. My boyfriend would begin to fight with me constantly about it and would say that he didn't talk to anyone and that he was only working on himself, and he said that he thought that that's what I was going to be doing at the same time when we broke up in April. 5 months later from that summer, January, we decided to have an official relationship and we opened up to our families, which was a big step for us. The relationship was difficult though. He still had trust issues and it was hard to work on that when we were miles away. I got weak and eventually ended up cheating on him a month into the relationship in February. The cheating started off with a drunken kiss that was a mistake, but it spiraled into something much bigger. When I did it, I was so fed up with my boyfriend that I was tired of the baggage and trust issues that we had in our relationship. I knew that this was wrong, so after 3 months of thinking of what I should do, I decided to break up with him and I chose not to tell him. For context, I did not tell him because he asked me if I ever did cheat that he did not want to know, just determined that if I wanted to be with him or not. 1 month after the breakup, my boyfriend came back into my life asking for another chance and he said that he wanted to be with me. He said that he wanted to work through things and that he understood that he had not been the easiest person to be with. I decided to tell him about cheating and he handled it pretty well. We worked on things and it was a bit hard at first, but it started to get better. I blocked the boy that I cheated with for my own mental well-being, but also for the benefit of the relationship since my boyfriend asked me to do it. 3 weeks after we just got back together, he had told me that he had hooked up with 4 girls during the previous 5 months, from April to August, when we weren't together. He went on 4 dates with one of the girls and he claims that he did not feel anything towards her. They've remained good friends and he has included her as part of his photography projects. I know that we were not together, but I'm upset that he projected so much guilt upon me for doing absolutely nothing when he had been the liar this entire time. I told him the complete truth and even told him the ugly truth when we got back together. Now I've asked him to block this one girl that he went on dates with and he refuses because they're still close friends. He gave me a condition. He told me that he would only block her if I were to block one of my friends that I had a one-night stand with during the 1 month in May when we were not together. He thinks that that is fair because we were both blocking friends that we hooked up with. I don't think it's fair because I didn't go on various dates with this friend and I also do not talk to him anymore. Is that fair? Is this too much baggage to even try continuing a long-distance relationship in? We are going to live even further away from each other in the next few years. I'm not really sure what to do or what to think. I want to trust him, but I'm not comfortable with the fact that he is still talking to and working with the girl that he hooked up with. I don't know who this OP is, but they really need to break off this relationship. Things shouldn't be that complicated and it just seems like they both don't trust each other. So why even bother stressing about it? Yeah, it can be tough to let go of your first love, but that doesn't mean that you need to be with that person forever. Just move on.
When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.